Welcome everyone to the Community and Recreation Committee meeting. What I'll do is I'll just get a stand for a prayer. Thank you. Almighty God, we give thanks for blessings which have been bestowed on New Zealand. Laying aside all personal interests, we pray for guidance in our deliberations, that we may conduct the affairs of this committee meeting with wisdom and humility, for the public welfare and peace of our Nelson Whakatū community, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Thank you. Welcome everyone. I just have apologies. I just have two apologies for Councillor Rainey and Councillor Sanson. Can I have someone move that we accept those? Moved by Councillor Courtney, second by Councillor Laurie. And order of business is as an agenda today. Once again, I'll ask if there are any updates of interest to the agenda. And as you know, by all means, if something comes up that you think there's a conflict or perceived conflict of interest, please signal when you're welcome to leave, if you so wish. Public forum, no, we don't have any public forum today. I'll go to confirmation of minutes, pages 7 to 16. I'll take those as read, but yeah. So I've done apologies. Yep. So confirmation of minutes on pages 7 to 16. That was of our 4th of March meeting. Can I have some move that they're accurate and correct record? Can I have someone see? Sorry, a question. Yep. So I've moved by Brian, second. I'll put it. Okay, I didn't move, and I first and second those. So we'll go the apologies. We'll go apologies, but we had moved and seconded. My fault there. I put it. Those in favour. Those against. Carried. And we've had a mover and seconder for the confirmation of minutes. I'll move that. I'll put it. Those in favour. Those against. Carried. Thank you. So I've moved to Chairman's report, which is page 17. And as usual, there's many things going on in Nelson, many things that the community are doing involved in, and many things that council has a hand in, either in a bigger capacity or a minor capacity. So I'm going to take that as read, but I'll just briefly go over the topic. As you know, this committee is a fairly broad committee going with sports, arts, heritage and culture. And something I've been personally interested in, I know many people here also, is the Tuku 21 Whakatū heritage, which has been going over a full month. And there are over 60 events on that. You may have seen some of those, and some go under the radar and some are very extremely well supported. But as you know, I enjoy my books of Nelson and New Zealand, and I've always taken quite an interest in Tupaia, who was as much as Captain Cook was a great navigator. I believe he couldn't have got here without the great navigator Tupaia from Tahiti. And there was at the museum just on the 20th, a couple of days ago. If you get a chance to go along to that display, it's put on by the Nelson Museum and showing the amazing contribution of Tupaia and his ability to help navigate the ship through much of the reefs, through the Pacific Ocean, and then coming into New Zealand, even the top of the south there. And a bit like we do every day today is we te reo, and English is extremely important. That was his ability of the understanding of the Maori language being similar to over in where he was from, the Pacific and the Tahiti. He was able to keep the crew safe and translate much of the time through there. But I won't go into much detail on that, but I do say if you get a chance to go along on the 27th to the follow-up of it. This is the book here, and it is in all ages, but I've got some very old books on many of these amazing people, but this is a new book, and the artist of this is turning up. You've probably seen his artwork in some of our City Council displays and at the museum as well, so you get a chance to meet the artist and understand more of that. So I know it seems like a bit of a promo, but that's something I've personally taken an interest in, and it has a very much significance at the top of itself when he came into Totara Weathers in Queen Charlotte Sound there. The Theatre Royal, talking about heritage, Theatre Royal, also part of the Tuku 21 celebrations, had a chance just a few weeks ago showing people around that great venue. Community Artworks, which is another great organisation in Nelson, just in the car park there. They had a mechanical puppetry workshop, which is also part of that Whakatū Heritage Month, and well before my time, but if it wasn't your time, please, you might want to step forward. The Coney Park, Pixie Town, and photography of it was just over here, and I've only seen images of it, and it sounds like good times back then. The Corfin Institute had an open day on 10th of April, also celebrating that Whakatū Heritage Month, and also as a fundraiser for Cancer Society was a tour around private homes as part of the heritage. We've got some amazing heritage houses which are privately owned that I'm not aware of all, but there's some interesting ones out there. So the long-term plan, you might have seen Paul Arrington footing the front page on that pest, or the weed program. We're proposing a long-term plan. I won't read that in 3.12, so it gives a good synopsis of what that's about in regards to looking after our ecosystems and vegetation. And we've got 10,000 hectares of landscape in Nelson, which is a lot compared to the size of Nelson, compared to much of the rest of the country. And I think it's very important that we look after that tree canopy that we've already got. We spend a lot of money and energies replanting, but we've got amazing mature tree canopy. I think we should continue and protect as much as we can. Also, Trudy, you might want to, if you want to mention anything here, the opening of the Rutherford Cottage at Founders Park. I see that was a replica of Rutherford's childhood home in Brightwater there, and you did an incredible job of giving an explanation of what can be quite a complex science of Rutherford, and opening that. And that was also involved in regards to the organisation, the Rotary, Rutherford Rotary. So have a look down there. They've got all sorts of things, even these sort of interactive games, if you know the chance, which relate to that. Brook Sanctuary had an open day, and I don't have to say how popular that was. I think they even got more than they'd expected, of 1,500 people turning up, and council having a Nelson Nature information stall. Sports and events, the Weet-Bix Triathlon went extremely well. I mean, you were there, Rachel, was that? I done past it. It's an incredible amount of kids. You don't realise how many kids at schools within the Nelson or Greater Nelson area. Just fills that reserve up. We'll give it a go. And we also had the top of the south. There was a bit of buzz of fitness with the Summer Challenge Women's Adventure Race. It was one thing I hadn't gone and had a chance to see, but they had 200 teams of three, got about 600 people just buzzing the top of the south there by Cathedral Steps as their finish line. Had a quick check of the turf at the Croquet Club, the Nelson Hinamara, and they had the under-21s tournament, and True and I bumped into one of the ladies there a few weeks after the event, and she was full of praise of how the grounds are being looked after. So it was good to see. Rock the City, that was great on 11th April, seeing upcoming youth bands and the acoustic performance acts at the NMIT there. Another thing, helped supported by the council. Changing Threads, that was going back mid-March, seems a long time ago now, but it was after our past meeting, was the Contemporary Art Awards showcasing fibre and textile art at the Refinery on Hardy Street. I thoroughly enjoyed that. And I see our sports parks, I see firsthand on Saturday, looking brilliant with winter codes coming up. And Natureland Wildlife Trust, who have been busy with their organisation, have opened a second-hand store just in Buxton Square there. And then there's also the Homeless Hub at the mailroom. I mean, I know Gail very much involved in that, and I think that's gone a great. That's all finished and complete now, I believe. Is that right, Gail? Is it?
Not finished and complete. No, there's quite a lot of work. You can't get into the building. The building's arrived, so okay. There will be an article on that at some point. So people are invited to share that article. That story belongs to Rotary and the mailroom, so when that comes out, that can be shared. You need a ladder at the moment to get into it because of the height needed to be raised for the flood levels. So you need a ladder to get in at the moment. Rotary clubs will be having working days. Is that a word that people still understand? Yeah. I don't know whether the youth councillors understand. Do you know what a working day is? Okay. Thank you, yes, councillor Mel.
I was at one on Wednesday morning, a Rotary one. Wednesday morning.
Excellent. So there's a working bee for our Rotarians coming up to put the decking on, so then we'll be able to get into the building. And there'll be a bit of painting, and then Nelson West are going to do some landscaping. Ray Bartley is a member there, so
really?
there's a plan coming forward for that. So yeah, still looking at May, sometime in May.
Okay.
Hopefully,
All right.
but yeah, it's all tied up at the moment with, it's a work site.
Very good.
Thanks.
Cheers, Gail. And talking about landscaping, I've had a number of people contact me about what was happening around the Tahuna Nui toilet block there, and obviously a lot all good things getting completed with new paving and landscaping, and I think it works very well, especially the way the sand moves around there and keeping that nice and clear. Yeah, no worries. I'll just at the end, that's all right. And just about finished, and the public library have had a display on regards to what's proposed there. Trask Memorial, I hadn't heard of, and it's of new bit of knowledge for me. It's Queen's Gardens, I know you've heard me say how amazing I think Queen's Gardens are, but the Trask Memorial gates have just been refurbished, and that's in regards to Francis Trask, who was a previous mayor going back just before 1892, and also a suggestion that we have a park. We didn't at that stage have a public park as such. It was the first park for Nelson as a public park. And cemeteries, and thank you all the team here. I can actually thank a number of councillors here in regards to the cemeteries, and thank you Andrew White and team and that, and getting a good understanding with that group and commending them on what they're doing. And I thought we got to a good space there and understanding where we're at and our risks, etc., and how appreciative we are of what they're doing. And I believe they're able to continue doing a great deal of what they're already doing, and with us as supporting where we can. And I see we're also successful in securing a bit of external funding for weed control of Grampians through the Kaimai for Nature program. But I won't go into detail of that. You can ask some questions a bit later after the meeting. And Eureka Park, I know Gail Collingwood was always very passionate about that. Eureka Park, if you haven't seen it, that's at Californian Wetwood stand, just as you get to the top of the brook, just on the left at the camp there. And it's a very nice, tranquil, it's a sudden oasis amongst the Manuka and the Kanuka there. So that's another great place for picnics and walking, etc., if you haven't already seen that. Just for a sum up, thank you, Scott, for coming down. I know we'll be farewelling you shortly, but I thought I'd take this opportunity because I won't, this committee may not get to see you when you leave later on next month, isn't it? Early next month. And I know if you're talking about the oases and great tranquil parks, I don't know if you've visited Scott's Park up in your room. It's always nice green foliage up there. Is that staying or going? Can I get you to come to the table? I know I put you on the spot. Can I bring you to the table? Yeah, so I know I haven't preempted you on this, but I thought it was an opportunity not to be missed. But I know the team are going to miss you. We're going to miss you. I see you moving over to Sports Tasman. Val, I know they'll greatly appreciate your services there. Can you put in a spot? Can you tell us a little bit what you're going to be doing there and what's the role?
That's a great question. So, so thank you very much, everyone. Chuffed to be able to come and have a chat with you all but I'm sure I'll see everyone around the place. Nelson's good like that, and heaps of fond memories, and I've made some good connections with you all, so I really look forward to keeping those going. Moving over to Sport Tasman next, Manager Active Communities is the job title for that one. Really just trying to figure it all out as we kind of go. My understanding is I'm taking over from Tony Thomas. Pretty much everyone knows who that lad is.
Yep.
So hopefully try and continue on sort of those kind of good things that they're doing over there, and really looking forward to giving the place a bit of a rev up and making it as awesome as it can be. Thank you. I wasn't expecting this, but yeah.
No, that's right. Very good. Well, I thought I'd grab the opportunity because we won't get to see. I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to say farewell, but as a committee, I'd just like to formally say thank you, and you will be missed from here. But we'll see you around.
And you can always come back. We're not going anywhere. Well, we might be, but council's going to be here.
And us, Seth, who looks after the stadium in there, I know they've got a huge box of pineapple lumps, so make sure he breaks those open when we come down to see you. Thank you. Cheers. Thank you, everyone. Hey, that's my chair's report. Any questions? I had Kate.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I just had a question with regards to the public toilets at Te Huna Nui. When we saw some of the initial designs and debated those toilets, we talked about a relationship with the Arts Council in terms of having some art either inside them or displays there. I haven't seen that. That might have been done, but I haven't seen it when I last visited the toilets. And I'm just wondering if that's going to happen or not.
Yeah, no, what I can do is I can pass on, but if Andrew's happy to.
I'm pretty sure it was noted in the minutes. It might have been part of the resolution, but it was definitely noted in the minutes that we look at
I'm happy to follow up what is or
as part of that
is doing on that, but if you.
amount of money. It was quite a significant increase in budget.
All I can say is that I'll follow up and come back to the council.
That would be great. Thank you.
Remind me if I haven't had a
Yeah.
chance to get back on that. Remind me.
And then I have a second question regarding the toilets. The doors are really heavy, and I'm just wondering in terms of accessibility for all, are they fit for purpose in terms of the heaviness of them? I find them extremely heavy, and I imagine if you've got some mobility issues, they might be actually too heavy to open.
What?
You could just check that too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fulton. Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to second or move or something your report for a start, but I just want to say and congratulate you on this because it's a comprehensive, detailed and thoroughly interesting report.
Oh, cheers.
On so many areas. So thank you for that. It reminds us of just how busy the month has been.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, my question would be in regards to Heritage Month.
Yep.
And it's been so much enjoyed by so many people in the region. Is it unique to Nelson, this activity? Do you know?
No, I don't know. I mean, you're in New York City.
No. I just wondered if it was. Anyway, we can explore that.
Ponder on there.
But it certainly is growing in popularity and thoroughly enjoyed by many. Thank you. I'll move.
No, cheers to that. I mean, it was just a scratching the surface of things happening in Nelson, but I generally try and put things that either I've gone along to or been very much made aware of and focus on it. But there's so much more you could cover that's happening. I think we take for granted. I know I take for granted. But thank you for that. So I've got Councillor Courtney moving it. Can I have someone seconding, receiving a report? Councillor Bowater. I'll put it. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you for your indulgence on that. We'll go to our first item, which is Youth Council. Yeah. So I've got Youth Council update, and I haven't had a chance to say welcome to Holly and Greer. Thank you. I think both your old hands at this. Or Holly, you've been here before, haven't you? No. Yep. Very good. So I've got down here Youth Council update. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Kia ora. So I believe this is our first update of the year. So yeah, it's been going pretty good actually. We've got a pretty good team, which is really nice to see. Everyone's getting on really well, which makes it really good. So this is what we've done. We had 3 youth councillors attend the China Friendship Society Chinese New Year celebration dinner, which was, I didn't go, but apparently it was quite nice. A few of you might have been. We did, and we've done 2 submissions so far. We did the RPTP/RLTP submission, which was the transport thing, and we spoke to that submission, and also the long-term plan submission, which is just closed last night, I believe. But yeah, and we'll be speaking to that.
Just a few more things we've done. Youth Council attended Rock the City as volunteers and MCs. I was one of the volunteers, and it was a really great event. I talked to some of the community that went and some of the bands that played, and they really loved it too. And youth would like to see more events like this in the future, and if there was, then Youth Council would be very happy to help out. Another thing, Youth Council has reps on the sister city creative communities, Stoke Youth Park Planning and youth sector leadership groups, which are really awesome opportunities for youth councillors, and it's really awesome for youth councillors to have their voice in the community. And lastly, Youth Council had a subgroup meeting with Alan Gray to discuss city centre aspirations. We discussed ideas to attract more youth into the city centre and just making it more of an inclusive space for everyone in Nelson. And just as a final message, on behalf of Youth Council, I just want to say a massive thank you to Council for all the opportunities we've been getting, and it's going really well so far this year. And if you ever need any of us, we're always available.
Thank you, Holly and Greer. Have any questions? I've got Councillor Laurie.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Greer and Holly. I was just curious about that chat you had with the fabulous Alan Gray and the ideas that you put to him for making the Central City a more attractive and interesting place for young people. Could you share with us what some of those ideas were, please?
Yeah, so we kind of talked about like having an around the clock sort of basis with the city and leaving it open for longer hours, if that makes sense. So having like adults during the day and then youth kind of having this space towards the evening, if that makes sense. And just having, you know, some more spaces for youth to enjoy, because there's not a lot of that at the moment.
Add on to that. So we've done a survey that's just gone out recently as part of our long-term plan thing, and a lot of like the main feedback we've been getting is spaces for youth to hang out in the city centre, like up on the top of Trafalgar Street, and just more areas like that. That's basically what we'll be pushing for.
Picking up on both Holly and Greer's remarks, spaces for youth, would you be in favour of music spots, as they call them in other cities?
Most definitely, and especially with like Rock the City, having those music spaces is really important for those sorts of people to, you know, be able to use, and also for people to enjoy. Just, yeah, with Rock the City, seeing how people enjoyed the youth bands and how the youth bands enjoyed performing was just really cool. So I think we need more of that in Nelson.
Thank you.
Can I just clarify what you mean by music spaces?
Well, I dream, as you do, of music being, it's uplifting. And I have read constantly about other cities having spots allocated, great big rings, coloured rings in their city where musicians can come along or groups can come along and play, you know, uninhibited for as long as they like, allocated for them to play their music.
Thank you for that. Any other questions? Thank you, Holly and Greer, for that. We'll move to our next report is City for All Ages Strategy Update. I believe we've got Michelle and Paul. I'll get you both to come to the table. Welcome, Paul. I'll get.
So unfortunately, we have an apology from Nikki McDonald, and fortunately you had Scott here, because Scott has done some heavy lifting on this project as well, in particular the engagement with the Pacific community. So we're going to miss him. Michelle's here though, and she also has been one of the heavy lifters with many of the engagements with external contracts and the like. You have the report before you. You've looked at that. I'll just make a few observations. We're in the midst of a seismic shift in the demographics of our population. A few years ago, over 65s exceeded the under 15s, which was the first time in our country's history. We're looking today at 1 in 5 people over 65, but the last baby boomers turned 65 in 2029. At that point, there'll be more than 1 in 4 over 65. It's a national phenomenon, it's a global phenomenon as well. But here in Nelson, we're further up that ratio than others. And of course, we have a strong migrant population coming in of all these retirement villages that have been coming up. You've got one just down for me at Coastal View, 200 odd, 300 odd rooms there. That could be 1% coming up from Canterbury and the like, because the attraction is for those Cantabrians to come up here. So there is a shift there. There's nothing new in all this that we've looked at. We've engaged with many service providers, with many support units and the like. you'll know some of the issues that we all face in an ageing population. We struggled with some people. The DHB were fairly coy about their plans and the like, and perhaps that's understandable, and it's going to be some years before that all seems to get sorted out. But although we are the cohort of the baby boomers and the over 65s are smarter, healthier, wealthier, and more experienced, and often much more in employment, there's just so much more of them that we are going to need those services, and the services of hospital, the building services, the housing services and the like are still going to be there and be touch points for needs of that future population. We were COVID impacted, as you've seen in the report there, and now you've got some of the team working on the long-term plan. But we have made some good progress. We're now at a stage where we have got perspectives on all the particular aspects of the strategies going forward. We are starting to define those strategies. We then want to place that out into the community and get impact back on that. And then once that's there, we then come back to council for adoption. But it's not just about the council, it's also about central government and their roles as well. And so we imagine that there will be an ongoing role for this type of committee in monitoring the progress against those touch points that we will highlight and strategies that we put before you, and ensuring that there's some way that is measured and reported on a continual basis. So we're happy to take any questions on that.
And Michelle, was there anything that need to be highlighted?
No, nothing from me. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Judine.
Thank you for that. I've just got a few questions about the City for All Ages, and some of it may reflect that I wasn't on council when this group was established, so apologies if it has already been previously canvassed. But I'm just, I guess I'm wondering if City for All Ages and then the vision actually reflect the goals, because the goal and who you seem to be talking to seems to be about ageing, but City for All Ages to me says it's a city for people from, you know, babies through to older people, but the strategy isn't actually going, you know, how do we make sure we're, you know, a city for youth? How do we make sure we're a city, you know, that accommodates the different ages and stages, whereas it's about the ageing population is what I'm picking up. And so looking at the vision as well, which talks about age-friendly community, which might talk about older people, but it doesn't necessarily, and then and values the wisdom and experience of all people. I'm a little confused. It feels a bit like mixed messages as to what's trying to be achieved and then the vision and the name of the group.
There's a variety of reasons for this. Firstly, whatever we do for the ageing population is going to benefit all the future population. So, and indeed, a lot of the work we were doing, disabled people are of any age. And so the work on disabled toilets and ability to get toilets in the main CBD and things like that, it's going to affect everyone. So there was a legacy part of that. But secondly, you'll recall when COVID came out and how everyone talked about the older generations and that, they got quite cross about being aged in that manner and that they were somehow different, had nothing to offer, they need to be looked after, kept away from the cities. So we want to make sure that they are part of our community and they are a solid part of our community, and we want to have a title that reflected that and reflected the fact that they're all part of this community going forward. I understand your point, but we did discuss it, and I just think it still is appropriate for where we are at this stage anyway.
Okay. And maybe that will be reflected as the strategy itself develops. My next question was just around one of the principles, and which was the third one, value diversity, and it specifically acknowledges biculturalism, and I absolutely applaud that. But it doesn't acknowledge our multicultural community or gender identity or other areas of diversity or gender itself. And I would, for me, gender, sexual identity, multiculturalism isn't an experience or a background. So I'm just wondering, you know.
It was meant to be as inclusive as possible. It follows WHO approach to these types of strategies, and they have been well developed internationally. Manchester and even New Zealand, Hamilton and Wanganui have followed that same approach and going forward. We understand, though, the Maori did not want it to be separately spoken about there or recognised there. They felt that that diminished their value by having that as a special mention in it. I have to admit that, you know, it was more about the inclusiveness than about ensuring we ticked every box there, because we felt that it encapsulates everybody.
I guess I'd just seek for the working group to reflect on that, because I actually don't see that it's inclusive. And then my final one is just on the WHO areas of focus. And it says they've been adapted to suit the Nelson context. And there was just a couple of areas that felt missing within them, because areas, this is on page 26, some areas are quite specifically spelt out, and education isn't in there, and education and retraining for older people in particular is actually quite a critical area. And arts and culture is not in there, and that is critical for wellness. So I know hobbies is in there, but I don't classify arts and culture as a hobby. And sports activities is specifically separated out. So I was just wondering if, why they were maybe not considered, or if this is still a working draft.
If you look under information, lifelong learning is specifically mentioned, and also under work, you've got mentioned there of encore careers and promoting those sorts of opportunities as well. But I take the point about arts and culture. We again thought it was inclusive and inclusive for all ages as well, and we'll have a look at that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Courtney. Oh no, sorry, I got Councillor Laurie first and then Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Michelle. Often when we think about the ageing population, we focus on the challenges that change presents for cities, towns and cities. But I'm just wondering, have you given much thought to the opportunities that it also presents?
You're right about, we all, it's human nature to reflect on the challenges and the cock-ups and, those sorts of things as well. But, we do think it has got a lot going for us, and perhaps we need to make sure that that's spelled out a bit more clearly in the strategies. But having said that, we get the same sort of feedback all the time about the issues. And the issues that you know about, the footpath's not good for wheelchairs and the whole range of things that are there. What I found in this is just how many support groups and activities are out there. You'll probably know better than many, that people don't know about. Mm. And again, it comes back to communications on a lot of these things. So your point about the opportunities, we'll make sure that that is also front and centre in terms of what we are offering. Mm. And we do have a lot.
For sure. Michelle, you got any thoughts?
No, only that I agree with Paul and with you. We have talked about the opportunities, in particular, some of the domains we have there, for example, work. There are lots of older adults who would like to still contribute in that way by continuing to work or by volunteering. So that's certainly, one of the domains where there are lots of opportunities. But of course, also experience and life experience and what the rest of us can learn through that. So it's definitely something that we will put on our list to make sure that we don't forget to focus on that.
There's a concern globally about the retirement villages becoming enclaves and people staying there and never getting out of them. But it was pleasant to find here that there are already mechanisms in place for schools to visit these retirement villages. I mean, they've been going for some time, and no one knows about those sort of things. Like it certainly hadn't.
I'm reminded by this conversation of a study that came out some years ago now that found the happiest people in New Zealand are women who are divorced over the age of 70 and live in Nelson, which is it's just interesting. No, I just think it's interesting. We got to look at all the angles. I've got one more question through the chair, if that's okay. And that's, Paul, you're a really busy guy. You're involved in a lot of stuff. Why are you putting your time and energy into this work?
Well, I was asked. I'm not as busy as I was. I've only got the airport and King Salmon, and a couple of other small matters. But no, look, if I can help in this, because I think it is an important issue.
Great.
And it is going to be a paradigm shift, and all of a sudden you wonder why we haven't done much about it.
Yeah.
You're right. Something.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Norrie. And I see as your chair of the working group from there, I'd be interested in maybe not today, but in some commentary on where we can help support this group.
And actually, some of the external agencies where you might have to play the heavy there a bit and get some better responses.
Yeah, thank you. There, I've got Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through to Paul and Michelle. Paul, I'd like to echo what Councillor Laurie has just said and say thank you for the work you're doing in this regard, but also thank you to your steering group as well. It's a fairly large group of people that are giving their time and thoughts and efforts to this. So everyone around this table appreciates you and them and the results that you hopefully will bring forward to us in the end. My question is more around the survey. I'm interested to know, curious to know actually, if there was a commonality around the responses that came forward. Was there anything of interest or learnings that you got from the survey that you did?
Through the chair, so the survey was conducted a little while ago now, and we had almost 600 responses. So, quite a large number considering, some of our other consultations barely get to the 100 mark. As Paul indicated earlier, lots of the issues that were mentioned are things that we know about already. Footpaths is a good example. Footpaths, it actually relates to access. So, it's about drawing those lines all the way through from the practical item that's mentioned to what it actually means for someone in their life. But we can share those results with you if you'd like to see them. The numbers have been crunched, so we've got some data to share.
It wasn't a standout as far as you're concerned. I know that Paul started by saying that nothing new, and that sort of gave me a jolt. I thought, well, surely there could be a little nugget there that we'd missed in this busy world.
Not so much through the survey, but we are finding out information as we go along, particularly in the health service area. We think there might be some serious work that needs doing there and some issues that are sort of heading our way as a community. From the survey, I guess one of the surprising things in respect of social isolation was that most people who answered the survey said that they were happy with their social contact. But of course, people who are unhappy with social contact probably wouldn't have, completed the survey. So that's one that's always a little bit tricky, but it was good to see anyway that the people who did respond were positive.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just part of a conversation that's arisen from this particular focus is an increase in debt in the older person and reverse mortgages that are increasing. And I have had a little bit of correspondence with Nikki McDonald about that in the last few days. And she said that nationally, there's been a 20% increase in reverse mortgages with one provider in the second half of 2020. So it's quite a significant number. I just think we should probably have a wee look at, keep an eye on that, at how debt is managed and how much impact it's having on the older person. Apparently, some are using it for home improvements, everyday expenses, a new car, or towards medical expenses. And we do see that in the news, that people are actually taking out mortgages because they need to get some health issues sorted. So I'd like to know how that represents itself in Nelson.
We've since heard back, well, Michelle's heard back from Heartland. It's not a big thing for them.
But it obviously is growing, so I think it's,
Yes.
I'd like to see how that's trending here and what impact that might have.
Yes.
It'd be good to keep an eye on that. The other thing I wanted to just mention was digital isolation, which Citizens Advice Bureau did a paper on, which I was steered to yesterday by someone who actually runs the program down at CAB. And it's very important that we keep an eye on that one as well, that we're not missing, that older people aren't missing out on opportunities just because they haven't got the capacity, or the example given to me yesterday was a gentleman who had such bad arthritis that he can't use the computer. He just can't physically do that. So he uses paper. Don't know how he does other things, but I mean, this is something to keep an eye on. On the plus side, which has been mentioned before, is the volunteering. I've been volunteering since I was 13, so I sort of know a lot of people, and it's often the same people that you see all the way through. They're amazing people who just go from one thing to the other. Once you've got kids in kindergarten, you see them again on the PTA at the colleges. It's amazing. But I think the key for it in this particular frame is that our community, if you took out all the over, I don't know, pick an age, 65 if you want to, if you took all the volunteers over 65 out of our community, we would be in serious trouble. And I think you probably all know people that actually volunteer. I know many, many, many people who volunteer across a spectrum of things that help us in our community. So I think they need to be acknowledged and honoured for what they do, because without them, we would have a big trouble. We would have big troubles. So I just wanted to say that I'd be interested in keeping an eye on that debt. That does concern me. Thanks.
Cool, thank you. I'm conscious we've got a few people, so I'm not going to go around twice. And just keep in mind, this is just receiving a report, not making a decision here. But I've got Youth Councillor Greer, and then got Kate, Brian, and Rachel.
Thank you. So I'm just agreeing a bit with what Councillor Edgar has said. I'm just a bit concerned because it's called the City for All Ages strategy. So do you focus on youth as well? And if not, if you don't have youth representation, youth issues you're trying to fix, then should you perhaps change the strategy name?
So just to reiterate what Paul said earlier, we are looking at making Nelson age friendly, which generally when that term is used, people think of older adults. But having said that, if we put our energy into putting more seating along walkways, that's probably going to help people with kids. That's probably going to help teenagers walking along. If we focus on sorting out bumpy footpaths, that's going to help people of all ages. If we focus on what's going to be great in any of our new council buildings, if we make those age friendly, so there's fewer stairs, is that going to help people with buggies? Is that going to help people with disabilities? So we stick by our name, City for All Ages. We think that if it's an age-friendly place that's good for people who are older, it is also an age-friendly place for people of all ages.
Thank you for that.
Can I just add on? So have you consulted youth as well? Because I see that you're talking with older people, but are you actually consulting all ages?
So just on the survey that we did, that was open to everybody, and all ages were welcome to contribute, and we had quite a few submissions that came in from younger people. But we're now starting our engagement phase. So we're certainly looking at all kinds of engagement events and engagement opportunities. So engaging with youth on the strategy outline is certainly something that we have on our work program.
Thank you for that. I've got Kate, Brian and Rachel.
Thank you. Thanks, Tim. Look, I really stand by the name as well, City for All Ages, and certainly when this was raised with us, my understanding is that it is about being a city for all ages, and particularly how we support our ageing population to engage with our younger population as well. So to me, that overlap is really important. And Matt asked a question around opportunities, and I think there's a lot of opportunities in terms of the skill sets and wisdom and knowledge that our ageing population has to share with youth and people who might need it. And I just wanted to touch on a couple of examples. There's a great documentary, it's probably quite a few years old now, on Netflix called Happy, and in Denmark they have amazing housing models where they have co-housing, people have their own smaller apartments, but then they'll have a shared wharenui, and in that movie they touch on how there's an older couple who become effectively the adopted grandparents for a single mum and 3 kids. And having had that experience myself with a neighbour for a decade, he just turned 80 last year, it's an amazing thing if you can share your knowledge and wisdom as you're ageing with people who need you and who value you as for who you are. So I think that we really need to think about those opportunities, maybe through the men's shed, through neighbourhood support, through Volunteer Nelson, and Abbeyfields, to allow our ageing population to connect with younger people and beyond their whānau. When I think about myself as a youth, Shays Elko was a great connector. As we were growing up as a cafe, it was a place to play chess and enjoy yourself, but it was a very age-friendly space. So I think creating age-friendly spaces is key to the strategy.
Thank you.
So thanks for your work. And I guess my question would be, is that your thinking?
Well,
Absolutely, yeah.
we certainly agree with it. We've seen the same things that you have seen as well. Putting into place would be an objective. That's a bit out of our hands.
Thank you. I'm just going to leave it to, I've got Brian and Rachel. I might make a small question or comment at the end, but thank you, Paul, because I see it's obviously engaged a lot of us here in our thinking, and it's obviously a very important topic. And we're probably broadening the scope, and I'm glad you're there to keep it back on the narrow. Yeah, that's right. So I've got Brian and Rachel.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Through you. Just two areas I want to just sort of focus on is the sort of a gap that I noticed in the strategy is about feeling of safety, because being safe, feeling safe, and keeping safe. And I'm just wondering what sort of work you're doing about that, because I know that there's whatever age it is, if you don't feel safe, you sort of withdraw from public places or new experiences or new technologies. So I'm just wondering, is there a focus about sort of engendering that, because we're a relatively safe community, but
There are, as you know, a lot of agencies out there that go on with offer diversity alert materials and the like. Doctors should be also on these sorts of things. It's not something that we recognise it, but it's not something that we get to turn into practice.
Yeah, because it takes on to sort of the second thing I really want to talk about is, people, no matter what age, being exposed to new, strange, different experiences or places or whatever that can lead to a more enriching life, rather than sort of doing the same thing over and over again and gradually recalling. And just, you're talking about this, this huge number, but the world is changing. The world is changing, and no matter what age you are, there'll be stuff that you haven't struck before. And I just trying to develop sort of coping mechanisms or adaptive mechanisms that allow those sorts of people to sort of participate, rather than saying, oh, well, this is the way we've always done it, and necessarily those become redundant. And it takes me on to sort of this coping with new technologies and so forth.
Sure. The point you make about this, the way we've always done it, came out of the earthquake. During the Canterbury earthquake, I was involved with it down there, and they did surveys around all the households as to what was needed. The older generation said, don't worry about us, we'll be all right. Worry about the people next door, they've got a lot of kids and so on. And that has been something that generation's been brought up on. As it turned out, they were the most mentally stressed of the lot. And that revealed itself later on. We had to get psychologists across from Australia and the like to help out. So yes, we've got to change that. Somehow we've got to communicate that need, that it's okay to want to be looked after, to want to be protected, to want to be enveloped, if you like, in the safety arena.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thanks, Tim. Paul and Michelle, thanks very much for coming to give us the update today. And Paul, I just want to pick up on your comments around engaging with the health sector. Has the PHO been involved in the work to date?
Yes, so we have, we've spoken to most of our agencies along the way, but we've got now coming up plans to arrange meetings to discuss the strategy chapter outlines and what actions might be coming out of those. So they're certainly one of the agencies that we have had contact with to date, and we'll be talking to again as we continue.
All right. Look, I just really encouraged and really happy to assist with those contacts with DHB, absolutely, but with Lexi, who's the Chief Executive, very happy to help with those contacts. I do think it's quite important, just given the announcements yesterday around the changes to health delivery, that we are able to articulate the needs of our region at a local level to make sure that as we go through that process, we're all very, very clear on what our strategic priorities are. So I certainly see the work that you're leading as very important to that. So perhaps we'll have a follow-up conversation and I'll see if we can set up some of those key meetings to make sure that we're right on top of these changes and leading for all of the ages in our community. But again, thank you for your commitment to this work, Paul. Thank you.
Cool, thank you, Paul. And I echo that, and I almost feel like I feel bad. We're sort of grilling you, almost like you're coming here reporting on the airport or so forth. But it probably shows the magnitude. So thank you. You're the right man for the job. And I just want to highlight that City for All Ages, I mean, it might seem very broad, but I understand City for Ages, if you're looking after the old thirst, if you're prioritising the well-being of the old, the access around the city, then you're looking after young, because we're all moving in that direction. And funny enough, I was looking at an international paper last week, and I got horrified. I saw the headline in about 50 is when you're no longer young, and then the next line said that was back a century ago. You're still young at 70, apparently. It's the latest international review of how the population is faring health-wise and economically and well-being. So, yeah, you're still young to 70. I don't know if there's a line you draw across that, but I know some 90-year-olds who run up and down the hills like nothing else. And like I said before, City for Ages, what I said, you're looking at after the old, you've got the older, the wiser, the elders. If you're looking after them, you're looking after the young. They help the young come through. And like I said, we all become a little bit older each day. Thank you, Paul. Very good. And thank you, everyone. So as you're aware, this is a recommendation that's receiving the report, and thank you for that update. And like I said, I'll get Councillor Noonan to move it, seconded by Councillor Brand. Thank you for that. And as I mentioned before, Councillor Laurie, and I see Gail, Trudy and Yvonne are on that working party, and I'd like to have a little bit of catch up with you guys, but down the track on that as well. Thank you. Very good. So we've got a mover and a seconder. There's no debate. We're receiving that report. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried. Thank you for that. Move on to the next item, which is the Bishop Suter Trust strategic presentation. We've got that on page 27. And this is a performance report for December 20. and the statement of intent, or draft statement of intent. And I think I've got Julie, Jeff, and I see we've also got Gabrielle there. Thank you. And Andrew, we got any staff reporting on this? Or approved?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not too much to say. Take the report as read. So the 6 monthly report is fairly straightforward. Seems to show a successful performance. And the draft statement of intent needs to be approved by the end of the financial year. The committee can provide suggestions, recommendations for changes that it might like to see in that statement of intent, and the trust may go away and amend the statement of intent before the end of the financial year. So I'll hand over to Julie and Jeff, if that's okay, to speak to the report.
Thank you, and I'll hold any questions till we end the chance. Something you want to highlight there? Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity. I'm going to be talking a little bit looking back, since our 6-month review is in your papers, the statement of intent, and also, as we were asked, comment on how we recovered from COVID. So the Suta is a visitor destination where art matters. We've aligned our statement of intent to help deliver Nelson and Tasman community outcomes. These are the two outcomes that we primarily deliver to, but we also deliver under other headings, economic and so on. Visitors, we're actually pretty pleased with how things are tracking. Our year-to-date result, end of March, is at the bottom of the slide there. We're about 10,000 visitors ahead of our target at this point in time, and it's looking like we're tracking well. This is a graph that shows a comparison. The blue is this financial year. The brown is last financial year. You can see April's missing in action from 2020. We all know why that was. But we are slowly and steadily recovering, I think. This just shows the difference between general visitors and venue, high use and after hours use. That's a bit of a different picture, but that's starting to pick up again too and recover. Tourism, we're definitely seeing the impact of domestic tourism. Although, curiously, each month when we survey, we do see people acknowledging that they're internationals. And our tourism picked up a lot earlier in the year. So October, usually quiet, was really picking up November on.
So in terms of why that happened, during lockdown, there was a lot of collaboration around Nelson and around the country. A number of our key support organisations, plus organisations such as NRDA, the Chamber of Commerce, Uniquely Nelson, all pitched in, and from that we had discussions on how we support the industry, how we support each other, how we can collaborate and how we can plan for the future. And a lot of that planning was done while we were in lockdown, which meant that when we came out of lockdown, we were able to spring into action very quickly, which has given us the results that we saw. None of that would have happened, though, without the two key campaigns that came out of Tourism New Zealand and NRDA, which is really the Seeing Something New New Zealand and We've Got This. Both fantastic campaigns. And we were able to be part of the early discussions and be aware of all these things and how we can use it to our advantage and how we can participate and support others. And I think this has then led us to a very strong Support Local campaign within the organisation, within our staff culture. Everything that we did, everything we thought about doing, we looked at and said, where does this come from? How does this support our economy? So that then has come full circle now. We're now in a fairly constant and steady trading pattern. Visitor numbers are still increasing. And whilst we were heading towards the end of the calendar year last year with a little bit of trepidation in terms of what would the new year actually give us. And of course, as we get closer and closer to that hurdle where we have a year's anniversary to lockdown, things have continued to sail on nicely. We have had a lot of support from suppliers who are now on board with us too in terms of that whole keep it local. And getting that message out there, just that as a, I guess the way we're looking at it is that we're a community facility, and so therefore it is up to us to sort of start to lead some of these things and to make it known that our facility is available for others, and we've been doing that as much as we can in the arts and culture sector.
Which leads nicely into philanthropy. We're noticing actually New Zealanders, because they haven't been going overseas, have been a little more generous in our tap and go and donation box, which has usually been the domain of the overseas tourist. We had lowered our expectations of our regular and bigger benefactors because of the change in times, but we've been pleasantly surprised actually how generous people have been and that they've continued with their benefaction. We've about to receive some very significant gifts of artworks, and we just held our major fundraiser, Palette to Palette, which was a sellout, and we netted over $65,000 just from the auction items alone that were donated. Here we are, bidding enthusiastically.
So revenue-wise, during lockdown, we recast our budget. I've lost track of how many times we did that exercise. Still just very much a major thumbsuck in terms of what would happen. We did obviously trend in a very cautious state with our budgets. But as we started to see the results coming through, we've reviewed and looked at where we need to be and where we're heading to. In terms of the key performers for us at the moment, retail is up significantly, and that is really down to the domestic tourism and our local residents coming in and visiting us and shopping. So we've been trying desperately to, as I say, promote and support local, but also just to make sure that our range of merchandise is unique. It's different. It's, if you're thinking of someone special, that's the place you go to get that special gift. The Nelson Suter Art Society exhibitions went from a major one last year being closed at the last minute because of COVID to a very, very successful one just recently, 12 months later. And so that's also putting the focus on art and on local. Venue hire, that's starting to rebound a bit. Just flick through the key ones. So venue hire is our next sort of major revenue stream in terms of trading. And that's something that we're also working with NIDA with in terms of the conference market. And the point there, plans are underway to refocus our event business and target the MICE market. That's not rodents, that's meetings, incentives, conferences and events, which I think Nelson is really well suited towards that niche market. Education classes, again, continuing to go strongly, and our lessees are recovering really well. And it's that whole supportive and support local branding that's helping that. So just quickly of the first 6 months, where our commercial revenue is coming from, retail there at 43%, education 18, leases. Friends of the Suited did drop, and that's a lot to do with the way people are feeling and what they're doing with their cash and how they are spending it. And fundraising events, that also dropped. There hasn't been as many, but they're starting to pick up again.
our capacity. We are open just about every day of the year. And now we have been for this past 9 months now. We're a pretty lean, mean machine. We only have 3 full-time staff and the rest are part-time. And we're often, our core hours are 9:30 to 4:30, but we're often open a lot longer than that. Volunteers' contribution, apropos of the previous speaker, is very important to us. And one of the outcomes of COVID is that some people haven't been travelling away overseas, so they've been contributing a lot more hours to us, which we're very grateful, and so are our visitors. Visitor experience, the main thing that we do is exhibitions and education. We do about 15 to 20 exhibitions a year. This just outlines the way we organise those. This is a few shots of the very successful Christine Boswick exhibition, which we had support from Jarden this year for sponsorship, which enabled us to go a whole nother level in our presentation. COVID impact, program rescheduling. We're still having to reschedule because we had some international exhibitions planned, but we're kind of having to keep shifting those out a few years. And we've had longer seasons, or we've had a domino effect if we're getting a touring show because another gallery's had their schedules delayed. But we've got plenty of good shows looking ahead. So this is what's coming up. We're doing a lot linking into events. In the next 5 years, we're looking at some significant Toi Māori exhibitions to link in with significant kapa haka events that are going to be hosted here in Wakatu. Lifelong learning, which was the topic of the previous conversation as well. LEOTC, which is learning experiences outside the classroom. This does get impacted by even level 2 because of social distancing requirements. We're contracted to actually deliver on site, but because of COVID and things like level 2, Educator has gone out to schools. But we're now seeing the recovery where schools are eager to get back to us. We're amongst some of their first outside their campus experiences, and we're Esther is completely booked up for next term, so it's looking very promising. Our target for the ministry is just over 3,000 students, but in a normal year, Esther would teach instructed programs over 5,000 students. Lifelong learning, we've got after school students programs and adult art classes also during term times, and they're becoming increasingly popular. The collection continues to grow with some very, very nice donations and also from fundraising. The council doesn't provide direct funding for collection purchases. They do, of course, in the sense of collection care. So our mantra, regionally relevant, nationally significant. And the collection's now online if you want to go and search it. That's quite fun. And that segues nicely into partnerships in our partnership with Makeshift Spaces. And hopefully you've seen some of these rolling out around town. The launch is tomorrow, blessing at 7:30 a.m. over at Montgomery Square. All welcome. But yeah, there's a lot of these rolling out. There should be by tomorrow at least 22 up on walls, and we're looking at more in the future. This is a marvellous collaboration. The big project ahead is for us to fundraise and commission major public artworks starting at the Suter, and our idea is for those to be the central works and then to have satellite works that are out further into the Nelson Tasman region that will somehow link back by some sort of magic, technological magic, but also with the hope that that will encourage people to journey around the region and explore what is really special and unique about this place. So we're just up to process where we're going to seek expressions of interest and see what comes in.
Fundraising, marketing and supporters. During tough times, marketers will tell you that that is the time you must make sure you've got plenty of money in your marketing budget. And it's very, very true. When we came out of lockdown, we needed to get messages across to the local community and also nationally in terms of the domestic tourism market. So we did focus on those areas. Fundraising naturally reduced during the latter half of last year. And it was now a case of saying, okay, the economy is recovering. People are feeling stronger and more control. So let's start our fundraising campaigns. And as Julie's already alluded to, we had the very successful P2P dinner just recently. That's one market. There are many others that we want to target. And it's about getting to know our market. And one of the things about supporting local that we've learned is more about our local market as well as that domestic tourism market, and why people come here and why people come to the Suter in particular. And so what we want to do is take that information and really start to dissect our audience segments and just find out how we can target these groups more effectively. The other thing that we sort of came out of lockdown was a focus on e-commerce and electronic solutions. So we're now doing lecture tours in the theatre at the Suter via Zoom from all over the world. And that came about simply because Auckland went into its second lockdown last year and a guest speaker who was coming from Auckland couldn't make it. So we had to think outside the square. And having invested in a little bit of extra kit, we can now do that. Yep.
So now to the finances. Did that interest you?
So this is this year, and I guess this is the one that came out of the lockdown rehash, and we are very much on track. In fact, we got to the end of the first 6 months, the 6 months reforecast, and said, really, there's not a lot to change here. We're above on income and below on expenses. The expenses area, the key ones for us are personnel, obviously, exhibitions and facilities. Exhibitions is really the core business, so we're really reluctant to reduce any expense there, but it doesn't have to make sure that it pays for itself and we get a return from it. Facilities, we've got a new building, but we also, it's a big building and it's a fairly high-tech building for an art gallery. It needs to be. Personnel, we're running at about 36% wage percentage on our expenses. In the museum sector, it's usually 45%. At the moment, it's around 50 in some. So we're thinking we're doing pretty good on that one.
So this is looking forward?
This is forward. So next year, we're not really predicting any great changes. Retail will continue to grow, we believe, and other income will start to grow. And investments, we're actually quite lucky with investments because if we'd had a March financial year, we would have had a different result. We had a June one, so the blips that came with lockdowns, we actually bounced over them and then came right by the end of our financial year. So we're predicting a reasonable return on that for the coming year. Expense-wise, not a great deal of change there, a little bit of extra in personnel. That's more some tweaking of some roles to give us a bit more bang for our buck in terms of what we can deliver. And facilities, a little bit of a reduction because of some economies we're making. Big one there is repairs and maintenance. We're well and truly on track with those. So everything's looking very positive for the coming year.
Sustainability, we're looking at the notion of sustainability holistically, with the SUTA itself as an entity being sustainable, as well as looking at our practices and impact. Just to conclude, acknowledge here our hardworking and very dedicated board, which we have one representative here today. They're a fantastic team. And a big thank you to this team for your support and ongoing interest in us. And we're happy to answer any questions. And I think Gay, you could join us with that too.
Thank you for that in-depth report. And I've got some questions from Matt, Kate and Mel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Julie, and thank you, Jeff. Just a hard question to start with, if that's okay. What, if anything, isn't going as well as you'd like?
That's not actually a particularly hard question. There's really nothing. And I can say that in all honesty, and having just met with a number of museum gallery colleagues in Auckland for an event, we were embarrassingly successful.
Yes, but compared to our colleagues elsewhere, particularly in bigger centres.
Yeah, the bigger centres that are really focusing and reliant on that international tourism. And yeah, we can sit by and say that the success of this team and Nelson, the team of Nelson Tasman, has actually helped us with that totally, because it's got those people out of those other bigger cities and brought them here. So we do have a lot of overseas travellers at the moment. They come from the North Island. And, you know, we welcome them with open arms.
Great.
It's quite interesting watching, though, after Auckland goes into lockdown, we do our surveys. Where are you from? Up north. Auckland, but I left a long time ago. So we are, yeah, embarrassingly
good to hear. Great. Hey, and sorry, Julie. Yeah.
Probably the only looming concern that I have is we have enjoyed the support of the Ministry of Education for learning outside the classroom contracts, and we have no guidance yet whether the ministry intends to continue with that, funding that sort of program. This affects us as well as the Nelson Provincial Museum or Tasman Bays Heritage Trust. So, and our contracts, both theirs and ours, will expire on the 31st of December this year. So we're not sure about whether there's going to be continuity of that kind of funding or whether we will need to somehow generate that, because both us and the TBHT provide excellent and well-used education services through to this whole region.
Right, good luck with that. Next question through the chair. It sounded impressive, the size of your wage bill compared to similar organisations, but I'm sure as you were telling us that on One Level Good News, there would have been a few alarm bells potentially ringing around this table about how much people who work at the SUTA get paid. Is everyone on the living wage? People getting paid enough?
Not all our staff are currently on the living wage, and the board needs to take the responsible stance of knowing what our position will be before we can move in that because there's other implications for parity across other roles in the institution
It is fair to say that the plan is in place.
to move that way.
That when we roll over into the new financial year, all things remaining equal, that's what we'll do.
Great news. Last question from me, if it's okay, Mr. Chairman. And I'm going to ask this because I see Gay sitting behind me with a bicycle helmet. And I'm just wondering, given the number of young people who visit the Suter, particularly for the amazing program that Esther runs, do you have enough bike stands?
At times, it's a challenge, definitely.
Yeah.
And the other thing we've sort of looked at too is charging stations and
Oh, yeah.
too. So it will be part of our whole strategy for sustainability and where we go with that. We've got a good amount of work that's being done now and sort of the way to go, but it's certainly part of the mix.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I've got Kate, Mel. And I just
Thanks, Tim. Look, that's a good movement into what I want to ask you questions around in terms of your sustainability strategy. And I love that you're looking at it holistically, but what I've read in the statement of intent perhaps isn't quite enough detail for me in terms of the direction you're taking. And you touched on in your presentation that you want to tap into the carbon zero or carbon neutral itineraries of sort of tourism and that a lot of tourists are choosing to travel in that way. And I think the arts has tremendous potential and opportunity to be part of a zero carbon tourist sector. So I guess I'm just kind of wondering what you mean and whether you're, and things like your sort of waste minimisation, you're getting down to composting, whether you're looking at compostable packaging with all of your arts which are being moved around the country, whether you're offsetting emissions for international exhibitions, and whether you're offsetting your emissions for your energy use within the building well.
The plan going forward that we've already started encompasses all of those things. We're working through ECOS.
Okay, great.
And that has generates a lot of extra work, but it will give us the benchmark that we need and that starting point.
Okay.
As we go through each day, though, yes, we are doing a lot of those things already. We're recycling, we are composting, and we're looking at how we get our energy costs down. And a lot of those are just simply economic things, but they have a good spin-off.
Sorry, can you speak up just a little bit?
Sorry. So we are doing these things on a daily basis, and it's part of our questioning everything we do and what the impact is, and we would get products and services and exhibitions from. So very, very conscious of the things that we can be doing now, whilst the research work and the data gathering and the carbon stock take is happening.
Okay, thank you. Can you remind me where you got to with you were exploring solar panels? What was the building not suitable? Can you just remind me?
We did a very comprehensive exercise to look at the viability of putting solar panels on our roofs. It wasn't economic, or it isn't economic for us to do that at the moment, not helped by the fact of the type of roof or roofing that we've got. But sometime in the future, when the lifespan of that particular roof is done, we may have a product that is both roof and solar generating, but we can at that time look at other ways of installing solar. It just wasn't going to be economic for us.
That's using our roof. The question has been raised though, should we use someone else's roof? And that is in the mix.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Thanks for that detail.
Thank you for that. I've got a few more questions from council. I just want to pull us back in that we're not using this time for making statements, etc. From our behalf, we've got an organisation here bringing us a report. It's a very thorough report about the previous topics and future topics. I just want to bring us back into questions rather than us giving airtime for statements. I know there's a lot of feedback we want to give, and we can email some of that feedback. I think that's already covered in the report. So it's just trying to get us back in time schedule, because otherwise this day will drag on like a long workshop. Well, thank you. So I've got Mel, Judine, Trudy and Rachel. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much, Julie and Jeff, for your presentation, your excellent presentation and the wonderful job you're doing. Fantastic. On page 53 of the report we've got before us today, you mention, third paragraph down, that a key objective is to build revenue generating opportunities. Well, as far as I can see, when I look at the charts there, they're all going exceptionally well. So my question would be, have you got any fresh initiatives, any fresh ideas to add to your range of revenue building activities?
Yes, we do. The short answer is yes, we do. And that is both in revenue generating in retail and particularly in events and event hire. So I mentioned earlier about the MICE sector, and that is a specific target market of events that we want to participate in. It's something that I was involved with in my last role in Auckland, and it is a very lucrative market. It's lucrative domestically and internationally. So naturally, we're focusing on domestic at the moment, and we are working with the RDA on opportunities to further that. Retail-wise, we were recently at a trade show and looking at sustainable product, and that's a niche market that is growing rapidly. So that's two areas. The other one that we investigated whilst at the show was e-commerce, and the aim is to have a online store that will specialise in a range that is easy to pack and ship, and that complements the range we have in the store. So we are actually developing a whole new market, a new range of product. Part of that is actually looking at how we can have product centrally sourced, so that we're not actually stocking it, we're not investing in that capital investment, and it's shipped. So we're looking at I guess a commission model, but it's tagged our brand and our specifications.
Thank you for that. I've got another question, but I'll only ask one more, but it's to do, I want to thank you to you both while you're here for supporting this Makeshift Spaces arts program. It's very good of you, and it's just the encouragement they need, because they're doing a good job around our central city, and for you to support them will give them all the encouragement. How can we let the public know how they can contribute or donate some sort of funding towards this?
Makeshift have been raising the money for this particular project, and they've elicited quite a lot of donations, and hopefully with the launch and the extensive coverage they've got on their website, and when people see the works up around town, there'll be more donations come in, which can facilitate more works going up on buildings. We've certainly got a lot of support from building, or enthusiasm from building owners, and we've had no issues or no problems from copyright holders, the artists and their families. So yeah, there's a lot of enthusiasm for that project to get those works out there.
I think it's a wonderful idea and a project. Selecting sites, is that challenging, or are you safe sites and appropriate sites?
That's been handled through Makeshift.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mel. I've got Judine, Trudy and Rachel.
Thank you very much. So throughout your statement of intent, you've got a lot of, so Mel raised one, build revenue generating opportunities. You talk about your online collection, building your audience through social media channels, building your friends membership. But there's no targets or performance measures that relate to those. I was just wondering why you didn't sort of transfer those over to have specific performance targets or measures.
We have targets for visitors and friends and legacy support. I guess something that we're trying to do also to build audience, and I have to have a think on how we measure that, but through events like Art Before Dark, and that's a fairly new initiative, so we want to develop that further into the future.
I think the only other thing is that at the moment it's very difficult to put targets around what we'd like to see. But certainly we can look at doing a little more targeting in terms of those items that you mentioned. We can certainly look at having targets around some of those.
So with so you do annual satisfaction surveys or satisfaction surveys, don't you? I'm sure you've reported on that before.
We do in fairly simple in-house surveys, but we also feature in the community survey that the council runs. Okay. And finally, just in relation to developing the relationship with Tasman, I didn't see anything around, I did see 3.5.4, but I didn't see anything around any specific methodology. I was just wondering if you could tease that out a bit. What we've been considering and looking at is delivering services, more obvious services, if you like, into Tasman. So little mini exhibitions, displays, talks at the Tasman Library, as well as, I suppose, lower key interactions with Tasman staff and councillors.
Thank you for that. I've got Councillor Brand.
Thank you, through the chair. I'm actually quite looking forward to tomorrow morning when they have the opening of the town, because I always look forward to your updates and presentations, and I'm quite excited to see how it tied in with the SUTA, with the makeshift spaces. And I do appreciate how you always bring new and refreshing ways of thinking and future sustainability, sort of out of the box thinking, because you're always trying to attract different audiences than what you always have. So I really appreciate that. And I do really like the feel of the SUTA when you go there. It's always very welcoming and feeling quite warm. So a couple of my points and questions were already sort of touched on and asked, but I do want to just go back to the project with makeshift spaces, and you may not be able to answer it, but I just wanted to know, how are they going to capture the feedback and the engagement from the community of what they liked and what they didn't and what they want more of? Because it's sort of art and it sort of ties in. So I'm just sort of trying to figure out how you're going to capture what the community think about that.
It's a good question. At the moment, the only way we can track what's happening is through the QR codes. And so one would naturally assume that if people are checking particular QR codes, then they're the ones that they're interested in. And those that aren't getting that interaction, perhaps least interested, because the QR code gives people more information about what they're seeing and the artist. So that's certainly one thing that comes to mind. But in terms of a formal plan of tracking the success of that project or the particular art pieces, that's something we need to talk to them about.
Maybe we'll see also if people are linking and going onto our website and looking at our collection online. So it's an interesting point that you raise.
Yeah, no, that's right. I was talking to one of the local business owners yesterday about the QR codes and about an app that creates like a local treasure hunt or a place of interest around town. And you were talking about moving people around the different parts of town, but also expanding further out in the region. And I was just sort of wondering if that app had been something that had been talked about, because the final destination could be back to the Suta and then create a further generation from there. So, and with winter coming, I was sort of wondering if that was sort of one of the factors, sort of like create and increase the activity for the Suta for winter time as well.
We certainly want everybody to come back to the Suta. That's part of the original strategy. And the link with the QR codes and the artworks and the collection online is all there. But that's something we need to talk to Makeshift about very quickly, because in terms of where to next, that's all part of that discussion.
Makeshift intend to, put out a map. At the moment, the map's accessible on their website, but probably in terms of printed form, we want to wait till we've got just a few more of the other artworks that we've got in the pipeline up onto the walls.
Cool, thank you.
Cheers. Yeah, Reece.
Julie and Steve, thanks for the comprehensive half-yearly presentation. Just coming to the risk that you identified before, which was in relation to the EOTC contracts. Can you just give us a sense of the sort of contract renewal process for that and where the decisions are made?
It's usually put up on GETS, and has been in the past a two-part tender process. So you first register an expression of interest, which is quite a performance, and then if you make it through that stage, then you're invited to make an application or put in a full proposal, and then we wait and see. The pool in the past, certainly that the ministry had to distribute, has remained the same for many, many years. And so their decision making has generally been to knock another gallery or two or three out of the pool. Yeah. We've managed to survive each of the last rounds. They're usually 3-year contracts.
Okay, thanks, Julie. So that's through the Ministry of Education. So I'm just wondering, given that will be a significant risk to lose that contract, not only from a financial sense, in my view, but actually from a wellbeing perspective for the tamariki and rangatahi of our region. So just thinking about the engagement I've had with our education sector, certainly that the need for wellbeing for arts, for culture, is part of actually helping through this sort of COVID instability phase has been highlighted as really important. I'm just wondering if there's something more that we could do to perhaps advocate for strengthening. Just hearing that you've said to us that funding provision hasn't changed for many years. Maybe this is an opportunity as a council that's got a real interest in wellbeing through a long-term plan to advocate to the ministry for definitely maintaining, but if not increasing that funding across the board. Just to run around timing around that, I think that would have to be reasonably soon, presumably, because there'll be.
Yeah, there just hasn't been any indication out of the ministry what their intentions are going forward with LEOTC. We are not the only sort of providers. There's also outdoor education, natural history.
All right, I might just do a little bit of follow up on that, just to see if it's with the Director of Education, just to see about that. And look, one other question, just coming back to the question you had from Councillor Ika in relation to visitor surveys, and I heard your comment that we undertake that role as part of our resident survey. I just think we might have to have a little conversation around that, because this is one of the challenges, because it comes up as we go through our annual report, and we get a performance measure on this one, and it's not something that is directly within our control. So I'm just wondering if we need to have a little rethink around that as to how we undertake that, because really it's the board and Julie, you and your team that have, you know, the degree of influence over that. You know, you're in the best place to influence that performance measure rather than the one step removed. So I just think we probably, as we come to the SOE/SOI conversation, we just need to think about that. I mean, I was looking at the Tasman Base Heritage Trust just for context. So they do a twice yearly customer survey, and it may be that they're using, again, when they talk about that, they're using our survey, but I don't think so. I think they do their own. So I just think we might just have to have a little think about that. Nothing concerning. It's just I want to make sure that we set up the SOE/SOI process as appropriately as we can. Thank you.
Sounds a great idea.
And just through the chair, we have been included in the development of the question for the resident survey. We are consulted on that.
We just find that resident survey is a bit of a challenge, so at our level, so.
I can imagine.
At the end of the day, anything that actually improves the data we get from these surveys as well, that's going to help us.
Hey, thank you for that. Before we go, thank you, Jeff, Julie and Gabriel, presenting on that, being here today. You've gone to great detail and some very interesting things in regard. I loved that picture of the cafe. What a caricature of the cafe caught my attention amongst the formalities there. But you made some very interesting statements in regards to the domino effects for us to keep in mind, for you to keep in mind. You had great support from obviously local and regional and out of Nelson coming here, and then that domino effects have highlighted something easy for us to overlook of those visiting displays when you've got other galleries are also having the same delay. And it was, I loved your comment on embarrassingly good financial position, because I was coming into this thinking shivers with investments, etc., and some of the bequests you've got in, with the interest rates being non-existent to get some return from those, you've obviously spread your incomes well in that through what was a tough times, and it was very heartened in regards to use like ECOS for its consultant in regards to they're very favourable on what they've done in regards to carbon sequestration, as you could say, and looking after your abilities to be ongoing, put in small words. But no, thank you for that. And just a personal note, if you ever get a chance to dust off any of your Charles Heafy or John Gully paintings of romanticising the Nelson well, not Nelson, but New Zealand landscapes, I'd love to see some of those. I think you've got some John Gullys, is that right, tucked away? I don't know about Charles Heafy.
Just go along to New Street.
Okay, very good. Very good. Okay, cheers. Thank you for that. And I remind Council, unless Andrew wants to add anything here, we've got here, it's basically, as you understand, we're receiving, as in the recommendations on page 27, we're receiving the report, which we have done, and then we're seeking our approval for the Suitors Trust draft statement of intent. So it's really for those bigger items rather than the detailed stuff. Judine.
Yeah, so I had also been looking at the Tasman Base Heritage Trust statement of intent. And I guess, look, in all of the SOIs we've done recently, you know, with NELMAC, with the port, with the airport, we've actually tried to enhance those performance measures. And that was one of the pieces of feedback that we gave. And I think there are still just some areas where performance measures or targets actually could be set. So the museum has 85% satisfaction, because I think, you know, and it's a point Councillor Brand raised as well, that numbers in the door is more like an output rather than an outcome. And we, you know, I think for the suitor's sake and for our sake, we need to, you know, look at the fact people are valuing it, they're enjoying it. That's one of the key vision areas. The Tasman Bay's Heritage Trust also have measures around, social media targets, growing community engagement. So I just think there's a few areas. The ones I had, which, we may not necessarily look at all of them, but the ones I had were around visitor satisfaction, user satisfaction. Because there's the group of users around conferences, venues, the theatre, etc., which are quite different target audiences to those going to look at the gallery exhibits. So they're very different audience members. Some targets around non-council income and Friends membership, and then the growing and community engagement. So they were some of the key areas that I felt had not come forward in the performance measures and targets goals.
Thanks, Tim. Look, I've just got a couple of questions, probably for Andrew in his report, where in his report 4.7.1 on page 29 refers to page 36, 3.1.4, where to undertake an energy and carbon emissions audit and develop a management plan was not achieved. In terms of addressing that, Andrew, in our recommendation, would the path forward be to opt for option B, that we request the board considers a zero carbon strategy in this next round? So how do we address this to ensure it does happen into the future? And I've heard that is planned, but I just feel like, could that be set out on page 58 under the objectives, performance measures and targets more clearly, that is the expectation?
Thanks for the question through the chair. I think there is some work. So the 6 monthly report is on progress to date to the end of December.
Yeah.
The trust will provide an end of year report as well, which will cover off on the commitments that it's made in terms of achieving work such as the energy audit and management plan, which will then hopefully, will give actions for the next year. So possibly at this time it's a little premature to state what those actions will be until that energy audit and management plan has been completed. It's probably a little moot to say, or at this point, in that respect, but one would expect that the trust would actually then go towards implementing that management plan in the next year. So there may be, I think there is value in putting more explicitness into the SOI about that particular matter around implementing those actions, which will be, or that management plan, which will be developed this year, and we can work with the trust on building the detail in that part of the SOI.
And so would you then expect to see a section in the objectives, performance measures and targets on page 58? I'm sorry, I get a bit confused by the SOI and the SOE, but on how they talk to each other. But is that where I would expect to see it?
Yeah, possibly in that section. But if you want to put something into the resolution from today, saying that you would like that focused on through the SOI for its final approval at the end of the year, end of the financial year, then we can work with them and put it into the appropriate place.
Okay, that would be great. So maybe, I don't know if zero carbon strategy is the right word, but that seems to me to be a good word. It's the strategy thinking about zero carbon future, so that would be that would cover off waste minimisation plus energy efficiency.
I think my recommendation would be to use the commitments that have already been made in terms of developing doing the audit and developing the management plan, and then focus on the implementation of the management plan in the wording in the resolution, rather than assuming that there's going to be a specific title on what the work.
Okay, so maybe if we have an adjournment, you can help me get the words. So request the board considers, I just need some help with getting the words right in terms of that direction. And then Matt raised some questions around living wage, and I guess is it around a social procurement policy, or to ensure that that's being delivered as well? How would we request the board to consider their sort of employment policy in terms of the living wage.
Yeah, same sort of principle, I think. So you can effectively, and as I understand it, ask for anything to be addressed through the SOI as long as it fits with the statement of expectation that council provided initially. So I think in terms of social outcomes, you could request that that's considered.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And just bear with me a moment. So in regards to Councillor Edgar's raised some things there, and for adjourn, if we do need to adjourn, Andrea, if we've got about the recommendation of the statement of intent, do we need to put something in writing if there's an agreement at the council table on that, or is that captured as you're sort of explaining, maybe a bit premature, or was it captured in SOE? Do we need to make, I mean, obviously I haven't heard feedback from the table here, but we can either accept recommendation here, which is A, or B, there's an opportunity for us to add into that, but I just want to make sure we're doing it the right way if there is appetite or desire or need.
So you can go with either of those recommendations. So you can accept the draft statement of intent as it is.
Yep.
Or you can ask the board to consider certain changes to that statement of intent.
Okay.
And what I'm hearing at the moment is that certainly from some councillors, there's a desire to have the board consider some changes to the draft statement of intent.
So what I'll do actually, we've got 1 and 2 on the recommendation, and then we've got the comments and feedback. So can I have someone move the receiving report, which is also number 2, the note of that. So received by Councillor Bowater, moved. Can I seconder? Councillor Laurie. So we're still coming to the next part later, but I'll put that. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. So that in regards to the next part, number 3, in regards to either A or B, what I'll do is I'll adjourn. But just before I do that, I've obviously got feedback from a couple of people raising some things, but is that a general desire to make some feedback in that on B? Brian?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. With regard to living wage, that's specifically mentioned on page 26 of the statement of intent.
Correct. Correct. So, I mean, I myself am comfortable with what the report from the suitor and they've raised areas that they're already doing in those areas in regards to, for example,
near the bottom.
going to the next financial year, what their intent is, and also stated in regards to, quite clear in regards to sort of the energy audit, etc. It was in regards to the
Page
heating.
71 of the agenda. Page 71 of the agenda.
Okay. Greg, can you turn Brian's microphone off? Thank you. So what I'm just basically with feedback here, that's just me personally comfortable with what the suitor have indicated and with areas that they've saying they're doing and they're looking at the next financial year, etc. to address from the feedback we've discussed here. I just want to make sure that we're not making it undue by going into too much detail. This it's more broader for bigger things. I'll just, before we adjourn, I'll just get feedback on that. Do you think we need to adjourn? I don't want us to, Rachel, sorry, do you want to add anything before?
Look, I just think this is one of the things we were looking for was sort of smart measures, and I'm not sure that this is quite. I mean, we've seen just in terms of processes, the letter of expectations is gone, so that's gone, and so we've, as Andrew said, that set the frame for what we're expecting. I don't think it's reasonable at this point to come in with a whole lot of extra things that weren't in there, so they need to relate back to the statement of expectation. But I think the letter was quite clear on some of the matters we want, and I'm just not seeing that clarity. One of the things I'm not sure whether that's happened is whether there's been a discussion with the trust in relation to what we were meaning by performance measures and what they need to look like, and so whether there's been a conversation to say, well, look, here's a couple of other models which are the next iterations, and I'm just not sure whether that step's happened. Possibly not. Trying to draft the wording that would go into an SOI in a meeting is a not a good option.
Steer us away from that.
So it would need to be to give some direction around some matters that the office will then go and work with the, in my view. I think sitting in a meeting trying to wordsmith, it's unfair to the trust, and it's just because it needs to be an iterative process at this stage. We've done the letter. Now they're really working together to refine that process. So I think that the governors can give some direction on where they need clarity, what needs to, and a bit of a list. And I think an adjournment just to work that up would be quite useful.
So you're saying we need something in the recommendation to give that direction
Yes, I
to
do.
staff to
I
go
do.
back to the governance side without going into detail. So thank you for that. What I'll do is I'll adjourn for a few minutes on that. Actually, we'll have a tea break. Do you want a part of that adjournment, part of a tea break? I'll make a fairly short tea break, and we'll come back to that. And we'll bring up time if Madam Mayor and Andrew can help to reflect that, because I want us to steer away I'll get everyone to grab a seat as we resume. Thank you. So with regards to the statement of intent and the recommendation, the second part of the recommendation, we've got something there in writing. I'll get staff to bring that up. I'm very happy with that. There's some nods around the table. I think I'll give you a chance to read it. It's a little bit there. Cool, and the staff very happy, and I know the suitor are very happy. Cool, can I have... Thank you, moved by Councillor Fulton, seconded by Councillor Edgar. Is there any debate on that? No, thank you. I put it, those in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried. Thank you very much. Very good, and thank you all for that. Moving on to the development of the Maitai Recreation Hub. So pages 77, I invite, we've got Paul, Rosie, Andrew, Mark, and thank you, Peter, for being present on the golf. Thank you there. I was going to introduce you as David Bellamy there, Paul. When I saw your photo next to the old man's beard, I thought you've got rid of the old man's beard already, but do you want to know that? Old man's beard. So thank you for the face of that. Cool. Cheers. I'll get you guys to present. So as I said before, we got it on pages 77, and as I there's been some, obviously this has been a progressing, you guys have been working very hard, and as I spoke to you previously, for me it seemed like a gap of change, but it's been an evolving for various sectors to where it was potentially going to be to where it is going to potentially be. So I'll get you to speak on that in regards to that, just to give us a bit of background on this report, how we've come from A to now B as such.
Sure. Thank you. So a project to develop a recreation hub in the Maitai has been on the cards for quite some time, at least as far back as 2016. It was included in the Out and About On Tracks strategy implementation plan. That was 2016. It was a priority 2 project in that report, and the priority 1 project being a hub in the Brook, which has now been completed. The project also has funding from MB as well, about $500,000, which is still available, even though we've had a bit of a delay. It's been on hold for a year or two, just because we've been working with Koata Limited, who own the surrounding land, and it's been presented to the committee before, which is completely understandable. The trails around this hub would probably get increased use, when we attract people to use it. And so today's decision is around settling on a location, and once that's resolved, we'd ramp up work on the finer details. So essentially, we're now at a point where we're ready to move forward, which is really exciting, actually. So I'll just talk briefly to the report, and I've got a few images to help with that as well. And I just, as the chair mentioned, Peter Watson's here as well, who's the manager of the golf club up in the Maitai, Waihitakura Golf Club. So there may be some technical golf questions. I can pass them. So what we mean by a hub in this context is trailhead facilities, but also on-site activities and amenities. So not just facilities for people leaving the reserve, but actually using them on the reserve as well. They vary around the country, these sorts of facilities, but they generally provide a parking area, toilets and information at the least. And an example which I've got here is the Codgers Hub up the Brook. So there's a photo there. That's a pretty basic hub. It's got car parking, a toilet, there's a bike wash down, there's provision for concessionaires to plug in. So it sort of accommodates events, but it also just accommodates day-to-day use. This hub is really busy. And one of the drivers for the Maitai hub is actually to try and relieve some pressure off this one. There's a number of drivers that originally pushed for a hub in the Maitai. I've mentioned the Out and About On Track strategy. We also had a large number of submissions to annual plans and the last long-term plan, and funding was included in the 2018 long-term plan to develop it. We expect that this will relieve pressure from the Brook to a degree, and that's certainly a driver as well. Also been a number of reports done over the years. In the last couple of years, the Bill report on the economic benefits of mountain biking recommends trailhead facilities to be developed in the Maitai. And recently we presented to committee the Regional Sport and Recreations Facilities Strategy for the top of the south. And that also recommends developing mountain bike amenity hub in the Maitai Valley. I do need to stress it's not just for mountain biking, it's a recreation hub that we're developing, so it would also cater for walkers and runners as well and other activities. It would provide a natural home in the Maitai for those surrounding trails, but also for the Coppermine Trail, which got that on a, there's another picture of the Codgers Hub there. This is the Coppermine Trail here, just to illustrate that. Currently people probably, I'll use the pointer. People would usually park in the brook and then do the loop, and then they get to here and they have to either come over Tantraki Saddle or come all the way back round through town. Having a natural start-finish area in the Maitai means they could zip up here, do the trail, and then finish in the Maitai, which would cut a bit of that time off at the end. So that's well supported by the Nelson Tasman Cycle Trails Trust, having a base there as well. It's also quite a popular walk, is to go from the city up the Maitai Valley Esplanade and then come through Codgers and maybe over Kaka Hill and get the views and back down through the brook. This would be a really nice stopping point in the Maitai as well for that if a facility was developed. And now that we have the access agreement with Kawata Limited, that's formally been enabled for walkers and runners. So the two locations that have been looked at over the years, I'll just explain this map a bit because it's a bit messy. We've got the Maitai Valley coming up here and the brook coming up here, and the green trails that you can see are existing trails in the network, and the yellow trails with the black outline, they are proposed trails in the Out and About strategy 2016. So a couple of years ago, I would say that we were leaning towards the Groom Creek location, so that's the bottom one next to the campground. And the reason for that is because, one of the main reasons was because this area inside the blue here, these trails here would exit in that area. I'll move on to that in a little bit. So quite a bit's happened in those last 2 years. One of the things that's happened is that those trails haven't been built. So these ones in here, which were initially proposed, quite advanced mountain biking trails, they haven't eventuated.
Mind that that's on, some of that's on private land. That's not
Majority of that
land.
is on Kawata Limited land, yeah, Ngāti Kawata land. And so the funding that the council granted to the mountain bike club, the contract for that work has changed a couple of times, and now those trails are no longer in it. So there's less of a motive to have it closer to that area. There's also greater uncertainty around the gondola proposal, which which would have been closer to that area as well. Through the Out and About on Tracks review, oh, thank you. Grab a drink before I choke. Before the review of the Out and About on Tracks strategy, we've done a lot of engagement on that, and that's shown a demand for more easier grade biking trails and learning opportunities for families. So that's another reason in the last couple of years that we've sort of shifted our focus towards another location further down the valley. Of course, COVID has also given us time to reflect, and we see this as an opportunity to focus on the wider local community, provide recreation opportunities for them. So we worked over the last number of months with Sport Tasman, the Mountain Bike Club, the Cycle Trails Trust, and the Waihi Takaro Golf Club, and are recommending that the location is this one here. So it's a joint hub location at the golf course. It's a bit closer to town, so that provides an easier family out excursion. We think it's a better, safer area for a skills park. One of the issues with the Groom Creek location is that harvest activities in this area, the log trucks actually cross the bridge right where that hub would be. So that would not only, it would require closure of the hub really when there was a harvest on. So there's a benefit to avoiding that. It's also closer to the Sharlands area, which is this area up here, this valley. That's an area that's open to mountain bike club members moving forward. It's owned fully by Ngāti Kawata, and That's not part of the agreement with council. So mountain bike club members would appreciate being closer to that for a hub. And it's a truer hub really in the sense of multiple codes and using the facility as well. So the Green Creek location would probably gravitate more towards mountain biking. The golf course has the obvious golf activity on board, but it's more readily, when you look at the location on site, it's more readily able to be developed for families, and it's got an existing building which has facilities that can be converted into cafe, and it's got a bar in there already. The regional sport and recreation facilities strategy also really pushes for this sort of hubbing activity. And one of the gateway criteria in that report is that the proposed development should reflect industry best practice, including multi-code partnership, collaboration, hubbing, cross-sector. So I think locating it at the golf course really ticks that box. I mentioned the existing building. That's a real benefit to having it on site as well. We can extend the deck, use the cafe facilities, and it really would provide an accessible 1 hour walk from the city centre to this location, and then an accessible walk back. So it genuinely is a good family walking or running option. As part of, actually, I've got a picture. This is just an aerial of the golf course with a 1 minute high level sketch of what we would be looking at. It's certainly not, we haven't finalised any concept developments. We'll get onto that as soon as a decision is made. But this area here is the golf club building. It has an existing deck that could be extended. There's an area here which is available for bike skills and maybe a pump track, additional parking here, perhaps composting toilets in here, and sort of a movement through here for those users, and then a trail across the golf course here, which we've been working with the golf club on to connect to the Maitai walkway, which is coming up here. Yeah, so there's a photo of the clubhouse and the existing deck, and it's the area we're looking at where the trees are on the right. We could have a sort of skills course in there, weaving through the trees. And that's just to highlight the existing Maitai walkway. This is an area that we've actually got funding in next couple of years in the proposed LTP to upgrade this route. So it's in places it's quite narrow and it's a bit rocky. We could look at widening it, and I've actually got some photos of what it looks like now. So it's perfectly all right, but upgrading that to especially some of the more rocky areas, and if it gets a high lot of use, then there was a cow in the paddock before it, but we can address that. So I was up there a couple of weekends ago, and it already gets a lot of use. So perhaps just widening it, and there might be some pinch point areas that would maybe need some grade separation. There's an area that's a bit rough, so that's part of this. The overall concept is upgrading that off-road route, because we really want to encourage people to get up there on their bikes or walking rather than driving. So it's strongly supported by stakeholders, and we think it's fairly exciting. From a legal point of view, the golf course sits wholly on a recreation reserve under the Reserves Act, with just the building owned by the club. They have a ground lease from council. So this proposal will increase the public's use and enjoyment of that recreation reserve, we believe, which makes it consistent with the Reserves Act. So the recommendations in the report are just to approve the development in this location, and including just procedurally under the Reserves Act. So I'll leave it at that, and more than happy to take questions.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for that. Well described. I've got Gail, Judine, Matt, and Brian, and Mel.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Yes, it did start. It started when I was chair, so we had lots of conversations with the golf club, and it's really great to see that an additional use. My question comes around the budget. There's mention that there is MB, I think, funding. Is there any funding required from council?
Through the chair, yes, there's 500,000 contribution from council in the LTP, and that's the 500,000 from MB as well. I have to put a disclaimer that we still need to do the funding contract with MB, so that's work that needs to come, but they have signalled that funding is still available.
Okay, so I would be, thank you for that, it's really important. I would say that I would be change or adding to the resolution that it's subject to MB funding being approved, if that hasn't been approved as yet. Otherwise, we're up for the million and we haven't budgeted, but that would be my suggestion. Thank you, that's all I had.
Gail, I've got Judine, Matt.
Yeah, just really excited to hear about improving the off-road route, having walked that a few times. So that's a great addition to this. Are there any concerns about cross-use? I know Nelson Golf Club having the walkway, the airport loop, they've often had concerns about, you know, the potential of cross-use impacts. Are we confident with those and how they can be managed?
Through the chair, yes, we are confident. The majority of the hub area is sort of across the river from the main playing area of the golf course. The main interaction is where the practice area is and where the path crosses the golf course, and we believe that that can be managed through design.
Wonderful. And have you had any discussions with Kawata Limited and or the Gondola Group on their views on the location of the hub?
Through the chair, yes. Emailed staff at Kawata Limited last week and they just responded and appreciated the update. And just we'll work with them around signage, around interpretation, around where their land is and who can use it. And I've spoken with Joe Rainey from the Cycle Lift group, and he does not have strong feelings over the location at the moment. So he's supportive.
Fantastic. Very exciting to see progress on this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt and Brian.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Love it. Went and did the Copper Mine Classic last year. Came second to last out of 200. But it started at that spot and it was fantastic. It was a great atmosphere. Also went to the Aorere Enduro recently, which was based there, and it worked really, really well. I'm just cast my mind back to early discussions, and there was a conversation about the potential for some of these features, I think, to be relocatable at one point. Is that still being considered?
Through the chair, not so much. That was more around the discussion with if a gondola base station was going to be developed and the hub could combine with that, then we would sort of move and combine. That said, we haven't got into the detail of how some of the aspects will move. And for example, the pump track may be a similar one to the Halifax Street one, which could be moved. So it's not a huge development as far as infrastructure goes because there was already a building there. So I would say less than it would have been if it was at Graham Creek.
Right. Through the chair, the Charlins, the idea that people will ride up there, I guess drive up there, park there, base themselves there, and then go back to Charlins. Do you think they'll do that? Or do you think they'll just keep parking at Charlins like they're doing these days?
Through the chair, I think it'll be a mix. I think the people that want to come back and meet friends afterwards and have a drink maybe or have a coffee, then they might use the hub as a base. Those who are in a bit more of a hurry might just park at Charlins, but I'm second guessing that a bit.
Okay, and my last question is through the chair. I really hope that people will use it a lot, that we do it, that people use it, but I also really hope that we encourage them to ride there. And when I see, that part of the hub is new car parking, I get that. Obviously, there'll be people who aren't local who will be going there to use it. But have you given any thought to how we can encourage people not just to pack up the big truck and chuck the bikes in the back and power their way up the Maitai? Can we encourage people to actually ride from town to this facility?
Yeah, through you, it's a big part of that is upgrading the trail from up the Maitai Valley and places that may need a separation from the walkers further down where we haven't really done the detailed investigation of that. But I think that's probably the main thing that we can do. The parking is just inevitably going to be needed. I mean, it's something that we need to provide, but I think, I'm hopeful that it will be a real destination for people on foot and on bikes.
Great. Thanks very much.
Thank you. We've got Brian, then Mel.
Yeah, thank you. Through Mr. Chair. Two questions. I'm looking at paragraph 5.1 and you're talking about the good old Reserves Act. There's no current management plan relevant to the area. And you look at the requirements of section 41, there is a requirement that we have a management plan. It doesn't necessarily have to be lodged with the minister, but the fact we haven't got a management plan, is that likely to be any kind of impediment or obstacle or omission that we need to address?
Through the chair, my understanding is that without a management plan, it just defaults to the provisions of the Reserves Act, and so there shouldn't be any impediment.
So just clear, there's no requirement, you're quite clear, there's no requirement that we have to have a management plan.
There is a requirement under the Reserves Act that you should have a management plan once the reserve is classified, for a classified reserve, but I have to say, I have to get back to you on it because it is getting quite legal, that stuff, so.
Yeah, I'm just looking at section 41 and particularly 41 subsection 13. Have a look at that. I'd appreciate some clarity around that. And the other one is looking at 5.7, the necessary powers, and I'll just section particularly around 53. Is it the work you got planned? Is that within the scope of that particular section as well in terms of what you got planned? I know you're building on existing things like, you know, it's quite different. Some of the activities you're talking about are quite different from a golf club.
Through the chair, yes. It comes back to paragraph 5.3, the purpose of recreation reserves, which is providing areas for recreation and sporting activities and physical welfare and enjoyment for the public. So I think it sits well within that.
Okay, so you're comfortable that we're covered. You've got sufficient scope in it.
Yes, and we've had advice from our legal team as well.
Good. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Got Mel, Kate, Rachel, Trudy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to Officer Harrington. Paul, thank you for your presentation here today. It's been a long time coming. This has been in waiting for 2 years, and so it's been on hold for 2 years. So are you really, although concept's changed, hasn't it? You're going more, and what I like most about it really does, and I think it'll have full support around this table, because you're including it's more of a community activity. It's not just solely for mountain bikers. You keep mentioning families, the community, and a destination, and all those words just press the buttons for everyone around this table. So are you ready to go sort of and meet your time frame of early next year?
Through the chair, yes, we're ready to go. We've got a project manager allocated in the capital projects team, and yeah, the next step is to confirm consents, and then we'll be looking to get physical works underway as soon as we can after the winter, because it's generally a better time to do it when it's a bit dry.
Yes. Yep. A follow up on that, I just want to pick up on the fact that, you know, you mentioned, I think you said there'll be on-site activities and amenities. And I do really hope those amenities are of some quality, because then it will be a true destination for walkers and riders and all sorts of people. It'll be a must-go-to place. And so I plead to you today to bring all your creative and innovation juices to bear on it and just really turn it into something special. I think the community would appreciate it, the ease of access and that type of thing.
Yeah, certainly through the chair, and that's part of the benefits of working with a group, with the mountain bike club and the other stakeholders we've got involved. I think it's going to be really fantastic, and the amenities that we have on site will certainly be of a good quality.
It'll be a standout hub.
I hope so.
Good. Chair said.
Good tag team. Hey, I've got Kate, Rachel, Trudy, Yvonne.
Oh, thank you, Tim. I'm happy to move the recommendation. I think this is a really exciting place we've got to, and I'm pleased with the final location. I think that that opportunity to collaborate with the golf course is one which is tremendous.
So Kate, just if you're happy to.
I have a couple of questions.
Councillor Noonan mentioned about a slight addition to it.
Oh, okay.
We've got something in regards to MB funding.
Okay.
Okay,
all right, that's fine.
Are you happy to capture that?
Yep.
But I'll let questions. Okay, thank you. So I have So we've got,
I do
Lever and
have
Steve, we've got some questions. I'll let you carry on.
couple of questions. So,
Thank you, Kate.
I really appreciate your climate impact section in your report, page 97. Thank you so much. It's thorough and detailed. I just have a couple of questions in terms of the delivering the capital projects, sort of the capital project through a low carbon emissions and sort of the production emissions of construction. I think it's great that we're reusing an existing building. I think that's fantastic. But I would hope that you're also looking at natural materials and hopefully not a plastic pump track. So could we, because it's a very important place in terms of natural already, what is your thinking in terms of how you construct naturally to fit in with the landscape there already?
Through the chair, overall, we're looking to use rustic natural materials. For the pump track, we've looked at a few different options and we haven't landed on any yet, but last I spoke to the project manager, it was not looking at one of the plastic ones, it was looking at, but it probably would be sealed. I mean, if it's going to get a lot of use, but it would be sort of earth build. But those are details that we have to sort of sort out through the rest of the design process.
I've got lots of confidence. Paul's signature playground play areas are all rustic, logs, timber, dirt, actually all completely non-man-made.
I guess I think if this is a destination space for families, then I think it's great that it's a mountain bike and biking destination, but I think the location means that it can be a place where people are, like you said, walking from there, or real mixed use opportunities. And I think that that's one of the exciting parts of that in terms of a destination location in our Maitai Valley. So that was just, I guess my question was to ensure that we're thinking about delivering to our climate objectives as well. My second question is, you'd mentioned that the golf club owns the building itself. Is that what so in terms of that partnership, are they happy? How will that work in terms of mountain bikers using the building?
No, that's through the chair, good question. And that's to be nutted out following this decision. So there'll be an agreement with the golf club around what aspects are used and how that works. So we've already had preliminary meetings with Peter on that, and we'll continue those discussions.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And just to follow up on your earlier question, we're also looking at downpipe tanks for water and composting toilets as well. So we see it as a real opportunity to have quite a sustainable development.
Composting toilets, fantastic. We might even get some edible landscaping up there as well. That'd be great. Thank you. Thanks, Paul.
You get Rachel, Trudy, Yvonne.
Thanks, Tim. Paula, and Rosie, just a few questions, and one for Peter probably, which is probably the first one. So I just really would, if Peter's okay, just like to hear from Peter just in terms of the complementary use. Just following up with the questions before around putting a walking track through the golf course, how this fits in and what the membership's views are in terms of this proposal. Is that all right, Peter? But you ought to come to the table.
I'm happy if you want to mention a few more, if you want to come to the table.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Tracks around and through golf courses aren't unusual. We've already mentioned the Nelson Golf Course. There's Hagley Park, for example. If anyone knows Hagley Park, if anyone has gone down to Millbrook, there's tracks through there. So it's a matter of design to make sure everyone's kept safe, and signage, and so protective fencing or protective planting. In terms of what the members think of it, we've held in the last week or two extensive round of meetings and briefings, and there is strong support among the golf club members for this. They realise that things don't stay the same, and this is an opportunity for a win-win-win. To, if it's done properly, this concept has the potential to increase the usage of the golf course and protect it, and also to raise our membership through more people going up there who see it's such a beautiful place to be and to play golf. So, and we're prepared. Any negotiation is a give and take. So we're giving up part of our practice fairway and prepared to have a track across our golf course that links with other courses. So, yeah.
That's really good to hear, and great to see the collaborative way that this is operating with some mutual benefits. I suppose just a follow-up question, and maybe for you or Paul or Rosie, just in terms of that, those future negotiations, one of the things that I can't see in this report is any reflection of operational costs that may occur. So I'm imagining that, you know, I'm not sure how that's proposed to operate, whether you're talking about a leasing space or how that would work in terms of the club rooms and in the land area. Land area is ours, obviously, but what's the thinking?
It's through the chair, it's yet to be determined, but I just to highlight that the golf course is a recreation reserve, so it would just become out of the majority would come out of the council's sports ground maintenance budget.
So I'm sorry, I couldn't quite catch that, Paul. The money would come out of where?
Well, the money would be funded by council's operational maintenance budgets.
Right, but if the intention is, as I think what I'm reading here is that the club rooms could be used by people coming out to use the tracks that would be opened up as well. So is that something that is going to be, is there going to be a cost associated with that for?
There's conversations that we haven't yet had, but there will be benefits to the club as well for potentially use. I mean, they run the bar. There's a number of benefits both ways. So we haven't had those conversations yet, but we're aware that they will become.
Any thoughts, Peter?
Yeah, there's a range of hub models around the country which we've just started to research. Some of you may be aware of what happens at Paniki, which is a hub, and which is shared by a range of groups. So, like I say, our research has only just started about what model best suits the Maitai, but a shared facility is a shared facility, so the costs and the benefits will be shared.
All right, excellent. Okay, well, we'll assume on that basis that I'm not going to see a future report looking for a considerable amount of ratepayer operational expenditure coming to me. Is that a reasonable assumption, or should I leave that? Is that a potential? I guess that's for the officers.
No, I doubt there'll be a report coming to committee asking for considerable
Okay, that should be able to handled within the existing budgets. That's good to hear. Okay, so just a couple other questions, just in terms of the parking. So I guess I have a question around currently what is in terms of the parking usage for the golf courses, is it a high occupancy or is there potential scope to manage this facility within the existing parking? How busy is it on Saturdays?
It very rarely gets completely full, except for special events. But if as we expect that there's increased usage, then there will be need for some further parking at some stage.
All right, okay. I just, as a comment, Mr. Chair, or just the officers, I'd really prefer we took a sort of adaptive management approach to parking. In other words, I don't think it's such a bad thing to have a little bit of tension on the parking to encourage people to actually bike, walk to walk. Given especially with the changes to the Resource Management Act, and now we don't have to, there's no requirement for parking. It's up to us to look at that. So I wouldn't want to see us doing what could be a potential over provision in terms of trying to achieve our modal shift objectives. Then we really need to be focusing that on recreational use too. And just the last question is just around consents. Paul, you mentioned you've got to go through the consents process. What consents do you think you're going to be needing?
Through the chair, it's really around earthworks. If we're building a pump track in proximity to the river, so it's not a great deal of earthworks, but it would be soil disturbance and earthworks at the moment.
All right. So in terms of the building, are there any sort of in terms of the club rooms at the moment, are there restrictions on numbers of who can be in that building? Those sorts of matters. Peter, you might know that.
Yeah, the restriction is 100 at the moment.
All right. Okay. Okay, that's quite generous. let's hope you get up to 100 regularly, and you need to come to a variation for the consent. That'd be quite good. Okay, I do have one final question, Mr. Chair. So, Paul, before you had some questions around the budget, and so we've got the MB money, and then we've got the allocation in the plan already. So you're confident that you don't need any further capital funds to complete this project?
Through the chair, yeah, I'm confident that we can complete it within this budget. We've done a high level costing, and depending on the contingency, it's a little bit above or a little bit below. So I think we're right on.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much for the work.
Thank you. I've got Trudy and Yvonne.
Thank you, through the chair. I've had lots of excitement by different members of our public about this, and a couple of the comments I just want to share is, woohoo, this is a logical step to have it at the campground, at the golf club. And the other one was, finally, common sense approach. Thank you. So I just thought I'd feed those two comments back. And the other excitement comes off it is the people up the brook, because they're hoping, and I want you to confirm this to me, that it'll take some of the pressure off the Codgers hub. Because the members of the public, yes, I understand, Kate, that people read the report, but they don't always appreciate that it does. So it's good to reiterate that at the meeting by the staff. Thank you.
It's a good question, because originally we were having it further closer to the Tangerine was to take a direct pressure, and we've taken it away from that. So that was one of my concerns, that it wouldn't, what originally this hub was to be number one hub, Brook was number two, it went in the other order in the end. But it's a very good question, Trudy, and I'm convinced after understanding it better that will take that pressure off. But because that was my first, not one of the concerns, but how it changed back to their regards to it was to give that direct access over the hill.
Yeah.
And your response.
Yeah,
put my
certainly.
mind at ease.
It's a real driver for this project, and that's the reason we're including like additional activities on site as well, like a pump track and skills park. And the Brook Hub will always have the Codgers Hub is always going to have a place, and it's always going to be busy because of the proximity to the Codgers trails. What it doesn't have is a cafe or a bar or an on-site skills park or amenity, and it doesn't have the same amenity as well. I would say it's a car parking area and a stop-go place, but it's not a place you would naturally hang around. And I think the Mai Tai Hub will have that. And it's a beautiful setting, and I think it's going to be quite successful.
Very good.
And the follow-up question leads in quite nicely. So you talked about relieving some of the pinch points along the Mai Tai track, because I do know a lot of walkers and dogs and other young families and stuff use that track quite a lot. So you talked about widening some areas, but there's some areas that can't be widened. So what sort of strategies were you thinking of those areas?
Through the chair, this hasn't been through a detailed design, it's more conceptual, but we just know that there are some areas that the widening is probably a relatively easy part. The difficult part is where it's a pinch point and it's steep, and so one of the ideas is actually a separate trail above it. But we haven't got into the design of that yet, but we have put the budget in for it.
No, thank you. I think the public would be appreciative that it is something on the board to be looked at and addressed ahead of time. And based on the conversations sitting around the table and from the public, I think I can assume that the acceptance might go ahead. So on that level, the promotion and the communications going out to the community will highlight that this hub is about all users and not just mountain bikes.
Correct.
And there is a budget for that promotion and the communication and signage and stuff for that to happen.
Through the chair, we would just put that through our comms team. It's not included in part of the project budget, but yeah, there's council resources to promote it.
Okay, I just think it's important that we do look at how we communicate and engage with our community that have been waiting for this for quite a few years to ensure that they are fully engaged in that process. Thank you.
I think I've got Yvonne. And then we'll
Thank you. Through the chair, I can just actually say, well, thanks, Trudy. That was all my questions. But about the communication, I did come down on page 100, and John Towns, the club president, in his submission to this, he's already said that they've hosted the mountain bike event, and they've got the Tasman Secondary Schools cross country. I'm just wondering about also too with the communication that we will be doing, and obviously the support that's around this table for this to go through. I'm just wondering how we're going to communicate to different levels and of also too with the community, the schools, etc., and all the others that we'll be doing, like the Harriers and all those. And I want to understand that, again, it's not just about how this is going to benefit one area, but all. So around the Harrier clubs, etc. I mean, sports, the Sports Tasman might be for the secondary schools and things like that, but there's other organisations. And I noticed that they've focused also too in their wording on the bike club, Cycle Trail Trust, Sports Tasman and Nelson City Council, obviously us, but I'm just wondering also too about the Harrier clubs and all the other organisations that might like to use it as their hub as well, because there is there might be a lot of impact on that Saturday area that they all want to go through. So on the MOU, I'm just want to make sure that the mixed uses definitely comes through, because I'm hearing a lot about mountain bike and I'm just wondering about the others, but that's been covered off by many. And I do think you've got a lot of support around the table for this, and I think we're all very excited. And I'd just like to go back to the fact that the Motueka Golf Course has a road through the middle of it, so I don't see any problems with a few trails. So thank you, guys.
Thank you for that. I'll just make a quick statement. No questions. You've answered it extremely well, explained extremely well there. Yes, it's been great for mountain biking. I believe it's good for running as long as you know. It's like all our hubs for multi-use. I know Andrew runs that on a regular basis, and I try to get a 5 or 10k run during a week so my kids don't give me smack talk at the table before I play them on Saturday. And it's a good halfway spot down the bottom there if I need to recover. But no, I think it'd be good. And it's groups that run up that valley. It's a beautiful valley. And if I can put a bit of a plug in for the golf club, it's one of the most beautiful spots at this time of year as autumn. You just go, wow, the trees there. And just even the journey up there, whether you're walking or running by car, it's a beautiful spot. And it's only when you see visitors come up there and go, wow. And so make use of that golf club. Some good people there. If you're having just a casual hit and going to one of their tournaments or events or fundraisers, you have a chat. It's a good community. So I've been convinced that this is going to help in many, many ways. So thank you and well done, everybody, on that. And in regards to parking there, I know you've just got your preliminary, not even preliminary, on how that's designed. My question or view is on that is make sure we do have enough access parking, because it's a situation when you drive or ride or run up there, you don't have to end up parking or someone parking on a narrow part of a street there or having to be held up going in there. So I know there's plenty of room in there for that, but please don't skimp on that either as far as accessibility for all ages, old and young, however they get up there. That saves me from talking in debate there. We've had it moved and we've had it second. There's no other questions, burning questions in their clarification. Thank you. Anything you want to end on that?
Just thank you, Mr. Chair. Just on the addition to the resolution, I just wanted to comment that it could be scaled down, I guess, is the only comment. Do we want to rule out the location if the funding doesn't come through?
So that's my actually very thank you. I'd note here, if MB, what they've indicated is available, but for any reason not all or wasn't available, would that mean the project couldn't go ahead? So I'll let.
Well, I guess this is a question. The report today is around the location.
Yep. Okay.
It's not so much around the size or the nature of the development, and it could be that we could decide that the location's there, start it, and then in years to come continue it. So I just thought I'd put that.
Okay. So my query was whether we do need that bit in there. We're just going to create issues. But Rachel, you seem burning to.
Look, I really would like that left there because I'd like to collect that $500,000. It was a really sensible grant. It is. This is around a key part of economic development. Don't underestimate that. This is absolutely critical to some of our visitor economy, but actually why people choose to live here. So this is one of our points of difference actually as a region is actually our amazingly accessible recreation opportunities, and they have a economic value proposition that's been recognised by this grant. The question I'd have for the officers is how quickly can you confirm whether you are going to be able to, off the back of this resolution today, you can pass on, I think what's going to be, I think it's going to be unanimous support for this. So we'd like to see that contract matter done quickly.
Positive conversations to date. It should be within a month or so that we have a contract. I just want to get that figure correct as well, because it's a shade under 500. It's 490 something, but I'll find that. But yeah, I think within a month or so, we should have an agreement.
Well, why don't we just take out the 500 and say subject to Ministry of Business Innovation and Employment funding being provided? And,
Clever.
or no?
So I would like, if you're going to take the number out, I would be subject to sufficient funds
Okay.
being provided. I don't want us to have to go back to the ratepayer is my,
I'm just one at a time. So I've got,
well, it needs to be something that covers the amount we need.
okay, and Andrew.
So you can think about whatever you want to put, but it needs to satisfy.
And I'll just hold just one at a time. So I'm taking it on board. I'll get Andrew as anything he wants to clarify there. I don't want us getting ourselves into a knot.
Through the chair, I don't know what the number is, and the team will be able to advise on that. But you could use the word approximately or up to sufficient for.
Two, I'm okay
together
with
might work
if the
quite well.
mover is okay with that.
I'm subject to approximately 500, I think is
I'll
better.
live with approximately. I think
It's about-
the reason for that me wanting that in there is to make sure that we don't come back and get ratepayer funding because we need to know that we've got some sort of undertaking from
Was it
MBA.
earmarked or earmarked subject?
That's how we word that from experience. It's not going to trip us.
Could it be, my suggestion would be otherwise could we break it into two pieces? Because I do hear what Paul's saying, that we want to approve the site and then what's carried out at the site will depend on how much funding we have. No?
Pause a moment. So I don't want us to get into a knot there. So Andrew, DJ and Paul, Rosie, if we had it subject to approximately or up to or current levels, I just don't want us to. I'm adjourned for a minute. I don't want us to break it into separate things here. I want it to be one clean, sweet, identifiable. So I just adjourned for 1 minute. Thank you. Table, please. We were going very well. We'll keep this. We're nearly at the 18th hole. Let's go. Thank you, Sue, for the mover and a seconder. And if I can get feedback from the staff here, we've got this in red. Is that going to make life easy or difficult? Happy with that?
I'm happy with that.
Thank you. Happy with that? The mover, seconder, thank you. I don't think we even need debate, but I'm not going to stop that halt. I'm not going to stop. Let me, sorry, let me finish. I don't think we need debate, but I'm not going to stop people who want to add. I'm not going to add anything to that, but if you want to add to that, by all means. So these questions are finished. I think there's good support there, but saying that I can't speak on behalf of everyone here, I'll open for debate. Quick question.
Just to be clear, approximately $500,000. I'm not sure what approximately means for a start, but I can go with it. I'm just wondering if they came back and they said, you know, things have changed, we'll give you $400,000 for this project, or $350,000 for this project, not 500,000, arguably not approximately 500,000. What happens? Through the chair, that's a very good question. My view would be that we would be coming back to the committee. Okay, so the project doesn't fall over. That's the reassurance I need. We're working on the basis of this recommendation that this is a committee decision. The committee decision doesn't say we won't do it. It just says this is what we approve. If we can't achieve that through the negotiations with MBIE, we'll come back. Okay, cool. I'm keen to debate, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Thanks.
Oh, thank you. Look, I do support this. It sort of started in my reign, if you like. So it's nice to see it actually coming around and back and into some decision. I just want to say thank you to the golf club for their openness to embrace something different from the traditional golfing and to share their space. And I hope they actually really benefit from it. And I really am positive that there'll be a good outcome. And I would really love to see them gain some members from this. I think it will be great to see a lot more people in the area. It is important to look at that walkway from the city, because I think there are a lot of people do use it. So the devil is in the detail. So the development of that for both cycling and walking will be important. It's a piece of the land that's quite countrified. And I did ask about the cows before, because I've seen cows down there before. And it's a nice piece of land that takes us to the golf area. So yeah, completely support it. And I'm really looking forward mostly to MB giving us a great deal, a big bunch of money to go to it. So I'm really excited, actually. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Matt. Councillor Laurie.
Thanks, Chairman. I'm excited too. I think that bringing golf and mountain biking together with this project is going to do wonderful things, because it's going to be an example of 1 + 1 = 3. It's going to be not just good for mountain bikers and golfing enthusiasts, it's going to be good for walkers, and it's going to be good for families, and it's going to be good for locals and visitors alike. I also want to congratulate Peter and the rest of the golf club for having the vision to embrace this opportunity and help to make it happen. I think it's a really great step for the club and for golf. I also think that this actually has the potential to increase the opportunity of the gondola one day becoming a reality. That project is currently on hiatus, but I think this project will actually help to sort of build a market for that future venture. I think it will help to effectively develop an audience for a future gondola, because I, for one, would still really love to see that happen. And I'm also going to be interested to see what comes out of this convergence of people and ideas when it comes to those buildings that are up at the golf club. And I have this vision of something happening up there, a bit like what's happened in Lyell Bay in Wellington with the Maranui Surf Club, which was an old, pretty sort of unloved building. It has turned into a fantastic cultural and sporting hub. It really is something special, and I'd love to see something like that happening in the Mai Tai as well. Just a last note for anyone who does have concerns about potential conflict between golfers and mountain bikers. No one wants to be hit on the head with a little white ball, but if you're wearing a helmet, you're probably going to be okay. And a lot of mountain bikers wear helmets a lot, along with a lot of other body armour. So I'm sure they'll be okay. So yeah, really looking forward to it. Thanks to everyone who's helped to make it possible.
Thank you. No more debate. Yvonne.
Thanks. I too obviously am in support, and I think we all are around the table on this, and I think it's a great initiative, and it's obviously been a passion of the golf club to have this going for some time, and I'd like to acknowledge the club president, John Towns, his submission, etc. And we've all discussed it in great detail around the table, but I am just mindful of the last speaker, Councillor Laurie's comment around the mountain biking again. I reiterate, and I'm absolutely passionate about this as a hub for all, not just for mountain biking, and I think it's very gracious of the golf club to, in the letter and the submission, that they have said that they are all for it, and their potential, the benefit of parties and everyone important, and it's an important community facility, and they want it to be used for all. It's very important to me that it's not just about mountain biking. It's about, we've had comments this morning, we've had people coming in, we've had cities for all ages, we've had conversations around throughout this morning around including everyone, making sure that we're city for all ages, so we're making sure that the youth, everyone is included in that conversation and how that works through. So I want to make sure that this hub is actually inclusive of anyone that wants to use it, and anyone within the community that has a passion to get up there is given the opportunity, and not one voice that is the loudest or the highest gets ranking over any others, because I think the golf club has been very generous in their support and their involvement with this, as is Sport Tasman, as is the idea of a hub, and a hub to me is a collection of many, not just of a couple. So fully support, very excited, just want to make sure that we don't lose sight that this is for all, not just for the few. Thank you.
Thank you. No more debate. Put it. Oh, sorry. Very, very true. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Look, I think this is tremendously exciting as well. And as a recreation hub, I do think it has a key theme in terms of mountain biking, because we've been trying to find a mountain biking location up the Mai Tai Valley for many years. I just want to acknowledge that the golf course proposed this to us back in 2015. And so it's good we've got here. They have been keen to collaborate and work with the mountain biking and the walking community for quite some time. And it's a beautiful space, and it's quite unique because the land is flat and it's green, and it's really a special rural space. And I think that there are many other opportunities which will come from developing this. And I'm sure the staff will be thinking about sort of the landscaping plan, the opportunity to incorporate Indigenous planting and potentially some edibles as well up there, and how we create that rustic, I love the word rustic, Paul, that rustic setting, which improves the amenity value even more up there. So I'm looking forward to seeing what eventuates. And I love the composting toilets.
Put it. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried. Thank you. Just take a brief. That's all, I believe. So moving into confidential, I'll just give a moment before we move into confidential for the shuffle. Can I have some? I'll have Trudy move. Trudy move. Can I have someone second it? McGurk second it. Those in favour going to confidential? Aye. Those against? Carried. Thank you. I'll just give a moment for government advisors to be able to